The man in the white chef's suit looks forward with contempt and asks Wu Jin what he cooked this time. A guy in the same suit silently looks at the man. He shows him a layered dish with lemon on top. Wu Jin reports that, as you can see, this is ratatouille. A man stands on one side of the table, and on the other side are young people with their hands nervously clasped behind their backs. The man is displeasedly interested in who put citron in ratatouille in the first place. He says it includes a tomato. Wu Jin explains that he thinks ratatouille goes better with citron than with tomato. The man frowns, closes his eyes and presses his fingers to his forehead. He exhales nervously, saying the guy's name. He stands straight, looking forward and listening to the man. The man asks him not to be arrogant, because the guy's duties include cleaning and slicing. He reminds Wu Jin that he didn't come for this, and in this world he has no equal in the entire world. The man puts his hand on Wu Jin's shoulder and closes his eyes. He's about to say something about cooking, but decides he'll try it next time. The guys standing around Wu Jin look at him angrily. The man asks about who they will evaluate next. His face takes on a frightened look, because behind him an evil man is heading towards him, calling him. The angry man shouts loudly and points his finger at him. He asks how he dares to speak like that to the heavenly demons and who gave him the right to belittle him. The man advises to bow your head and ask for forgiveness. Wu Jin calmly looks away. He thinks that in his previous life, the elders also performed, but it seems that in this world his skills are useless. There is emptiness around, only Wu Jin standing in front of the table. In his past life, many people dressed in black are standing in front of a staircase with a man standing at the top. The lord of the demonic cult is given a long life. Wu Jin conquered Chunwon and became a heavenly demon, and many talented warriors fell at his hands. The demon lord, a man with long dark hair, looks at the people. However, Wu Jin was not interested in his activities. There is a certain dish on the plate. The demon lord explains that it is a cayenne pepper stew with beak dough. Smiling and gesturing with his hand, he explains that he personally prepared it for them and asks people to start eating. To fulfill her dream, Wu Jin had to conquer Chunwon. In front of the plate are a girl with a high ponytail, a strong bald man and an elderly man with long gray hair and a beard. The girl thinks that they are being given this food again. The strong man wonders what they have in store this time, and the old man decides that Wu Jin really is a demon. This was the only way Wu Jin could become a better chef. A bridge was built over the river that leads to the city. There is a bright explosion rising high. In 2011, the gate appeared. Wu Jin's parents died shortly after his birth. This was not something special, since many children are orphaned due to accidents. Little Wu Jin stands next to a frisky boy his age, and behind them stand a woman in a beige jacket and a man in glasses. Friends of his parents became Wu Jin's guardians, and despite the fact that they already had a son, they treated Wu Jin like their own. A man in a white shirt sits on the broken ground. There is a hole in his chest, and there is a lot of blood on his clothes. On the day the gate appeared, Wu Jin's stepfather died due to an accident. The son of Wu Jin's guardians hugs his mother and angrily looks after Wu Jin as he leaves. There are large stones lying around and fire can be seen. Wu Jin's gaze becomes frightened. He sees a huge monster in front of him, whose head lies on the ground. The guy realizes that he remembered everything. With a white smile, he looks down and thinks about what he still can't believe. Wu Jin turns the ingredients in the pan. The guy is happy that he was able to get out of the world of martial arts and can now focus on cooking. He stands in a clean kitchen near the stove. Wu Jin thinks that cooking is difficult for him. There are 4 plates of cooked food in front of him. 1 plate large, 1 medium and 1 small, as well as a bowl of rice. Wu Jin realizes that there are many more people in this world who think his food is terrible. He doesn't understand why this happens. Wu Jin remembers a moment in a past life when a strong man, Elder Quack, fainted because of his food. The frightened old man turns in his direction, and the girl explains that Elder Quack was simply amazed by the blue taste of Wu Jin's dish. The guy thinks that in the past the elders loved his food. Wu Jin sits down at the table and picks up his chopsticks, looking at the food with anticipation. He realizes with admiration that the vegetable stew with sausage has an incredible shine. His brother, Seon Ho, returns home with a travel backpack on his back. He reports that he has come home. The guy closes his eyes with displeasure and sniffs the air, trying to understand what he smells. Sun Ho walks into the kitchen and silently looks at Wu Jin, who is sitting in front of the food and glowing with happiness. He takes the sausage with his chopsticks. Sun Ho looks at his brother with displeasure. He asks if Wu Jin did it, and mentally hopes that he will say that it is not so. Wu Jin looks at his brother in surprise as he chews his food. He replies that he actually did it and suggests Sun Ho give it a try. He stands silently and looks forward. Sunho takes the chopsticks between which the sausage is sandwiched and looks at it with contempt. The guy decides to try it, because Woo Jin now works at Chef It, and perhaps his skills have improved, and it is unlikely that he would eat it with such pleasure if the food was bad. The guy doubts that it is possible to ruin such a simple dish. Sunho puts food in his mouth. He thinks that he is so hungry that he no longer cares what he eats, even if Woo Jin did it. With his eyes wide, Seonho spits out what he just put in his mouth. He looks ahead in horror, realizing that if he swallowed this, he would definitely die. Sunho grabs the water bottle and starts drinking greedily. The guy assumes that his brother used rotten vegetables, although he immediately realizes that this is impossible, because his mother would not store such vegetables in the refrigerator. Sunho doesn't understand what his brother does with the food. He turns around in fear, noticing something. The guy looks in horror at the almost empty bag of cherries. Seonho looks at Woo Jin, who puts food in his mouth and looks at his brother in surprise. Sunho asks him if he put cherries in the dish. He cheerfully replies that this is so. He chews his food contentedly, explaining that he finally understood and put cherries instead of sugar. Woo Jin says that this berry adds sourness and freshness to the dish. He notes that this is in every way better than semi-finished products. Sunho looks at his brother in fear and, grabbing his bag, says that he understands. He announces that he's going to take a shower and Woo Jin can eat his dish by himself. The guy remains sitting at the table and is silent. He thinks that exactly a year ago he remembered his past life and started cooking. Sitting at the table, Woo Jin remembers the cook who sighed heavily after tasting his food, as well as the brother who spat it out. Woo Jin understands that people in this world don't like the sight, smell, or taste of the food he cooks one bit. The guy looks ahead and thinks about something. Suddenly, he hears a delighted cry. Woo Jin looks up questioningly and hears that the food looks delicious. Sunho washes himself in the shower and thinks about how he could add cherries to sausages and vegetables. The guy stands under the pressure of water with a dissatisfied look. He doesn't understand if they can even taste like that. Sunho notes that his brother is very obsessed with cooking. The guy opens his eyes, which reveal thoughtfulness. He understands that Woo Jin does something else much better. When the accident happens, Sunho hugs his mother and looks at Woo Jin. He stands near the monster's head with his leg raised, leaving a blue beam of light behind him. With a murderous look, Woo Jin turns his head, looking at the monster's head. He looks at the monster in surprise, blood now oozing from its throat, and Sunho looks at his brother. The guy thinks that Woo Jin definitely woke up that day. Seonho is drying off after his shower and realizes that he is also awakened, but he is far from being like Woo Jin. He decides that his brother will definitely be able to achieve S rank. Sunho imagines him and Woo Jin, wearing special clothes and holding swords, standing with their backs to each other. He thinks that if Woo Jin became a hunter, they could catch monsters together and avenge their father. There is a sausage above the girl's hand, and Woo Jin looks at it in surprise. The girl says it has a sweet and sour smell and a bitter but deep taste. A small girl with long blonde hair and big ears puts her hands to her cheeks. She says that she has only tasted such delicious food once. She flies around a guy who is trying to understand what this means. The girl notes that this is a simple dish with stewed vegetables and sauce. 2 green circles are visible above her head. The girl looks at the dish and exclaims that in Woo Jin's execution it sparkled with new colors, especially the sauce. She suggests that the secret of this dish is in the sauce. Woo Jin smiles and looks at the girl, deciding that she knows a lot about food. She asks if she can find out the name of the dish. Woo Jin replies that it's sausages with stewed vegetables and cherries. The girl folds her arms in front of her chest and chews her food contentedly. She asks if cherries or sausages with vegetables affected the taste. The girl looks at Woo Jin in puzzlement and surprise. He asks about who she is. The girl does not give any clear answer. She raises her hand. The girl winks at Woo Jin and exclaims that she is the spirit of the secret recordings and she was trapped in the item. Against the background of the dark sky one can see a pendant with a beautiful stone, a watch with the image of the moon, and a book. The spirit of the secret notes explains that they make deals with people and increase their skill points. The girl exclaims that she is the spirit of the dungeon's secret recipes. The guy walks past other chefs who are chopping. The spirit of secret recipes reveals that her job is to initiate those who are terrible cooks. The girl sits in the air and says with a satisfied look that she knows many recipes that do not exist in this world. Woo Jin looks at her in surprise and confusion. The spirit of the secret recipes claims that if he masters these recipes, he will be able to create a dish that no one has ever been able to create. The girl smiles at Woo Jin, who has already opened his mouth in surprise. She says that she came here to help him with this. The girl remembers a fat bald man with a ladle in his hand. She says that she had the opportunity to meet many chefs. The spirit also remembers another cook, a girl with red hair. She explains that none of them succeeded in bringing her recipe to life. The girl looks at Woo Jin and says that all the chefs lacked the skills to make a deal with her. Spirit puts his hands on his hips and looks at Woo Jin happily. The girl exclaims that he is different. He, folding his hands in front of his chest, is interested in what is so special about him. The spirit remembers a plate of his food and explains that when she tried his dishes, sausages with vegetables and cherries, she realized that it was Woo Jin that she needed. The girl looks at him joyfully. She asks if he will make a deal with her. Woo Jin looks at his brother's big backpack. He assumes that the spirit came out of there, which means she must make a deal with Sun Ho. She spreads her arms to the sides and says that she does not offer this to just anyone. Woo Jin lifts his head, looking at the spirit. He notes that her offer sounds tempting. The guy wants to say something against it, but everything around him disappears. All that remains is him, the table, chairs, and the spirit girl. Information appears indicating that the conditions have been met. Signs appear in front of a shocked Woo Jin. It says that the seal on the aesthetic item was removed. The secret cooking records of the dungeon were obtained. The culinary secret records shows Woo Jin as the host. The legendary item began to fuse. The peaceful class, dungeon cook, was obtained. Behind the guy, his kitchen is visible, and a surprised Woo Jin asks what it is. The girl leans on the top of the table. It says that the legendary item is secret culinary skills. Cooking skills are at the first level. There are no recipes or quests. Spirit says that since they made a deal, Woo Jin can check the secret cooking notes. Woo Jin's gaze lights up with interest. He reads the information and asks the girl if there are any acceptable recipes at the first level. The guy, confused, realizes that he, Mr. Muram, does not have the right to open. The spirit's face becomes dissatisfied. She exclaims that this is the level of secret cooking notes, and this is not Woo Jin's level. The girl tells him not to think that this means he is incompetent. Woo Jin asks to speak more slowly. The table says that the cooking skill is at level 1. The spirit explains that this is a level of secret cooking notes, which shows the degree of mastery of the secret cooking skills. On a yellow background you can see the silhouette of a smiling man, and next to it is a paper with some notes. The spirit says that the level can be increased by completing a quest or simply by preparing a dish. There is a silhouette of a man standing on a blue background, and meat is nearby. The girl explains that the higher the level, the more recipes available. She reveals that Woo Jin currently has no valid recipes or quests because he is not a hunter. In the forest there is a tall stone building with a top in the shape of a man with a sword. There is also a blue portal inside. The spirit says that since the dishes require ingredients from the dungeon, the recipes will be closed until you enter there. Woo Jin looks at the girl happily and suggests that if she becomes a hunter, she will be able to open them. Behind the girl is a tall stone tower with a black icon and blue icons in a circle. She raises her index finger and says this is correct. The girl explains that if Woo Jin climbs the training tower, she can unlock recipes and receive quests. Woo Jin looks at her phone and puts her finger to her chin. The guy thinks about what Sun Ho said, that the tower opens once every 3 months. He notices something and looks at the screen in surprise. Woo Jin exclaims that this is great. The next day, in the city there is an establishment where Woo Jin works. There, behind the cash register, is a man who assessed his dish yesterday. He thinks about how he was too strict with Woo Jin yesterday, but it wouldn't be nice to lie. Suddenly, the man notices something. He realizes that Woo Jin is an ideal employee, apart from his cooking, because he single-handedly does the work of 3. The man notices a notification from Woo Jin on his phone, which has a wallpaper of some kind of dish. He points out that Woo Jin doesn't usually text him, and maybe it's because of yesterday. The man says he now feels awkward. After reading the message, he is very surprised. Woo Jin walks down the street with a spirit on her head. The man understands that he is quitting his job. A huge explosion occurs in the city. After the incident with the gate, people began to experience changes in their bodies. So he, who learned to use mana, became hunters. Of course, there were cases when people were born capable by nature. Against the background of a clear sky stands a tall stone tower. Information about this was not made public. However, after the incident with the gates, mysterious towers began to appear all over the world. It was also discovered that for conquering the tower, people receive incredible power. Light leaks into the tower through the slightly open doors. There are torches and blue flags hanging there. Countless changes took place inside the tower, during which various tests appeared there. Only those who managed to defeat all the monsters received special power. Closer to the top of the learning tower, there is a black icon. Despite the danger of the tests, the number of people wishing to become hunters increased every day. Many hands reach out to a gold icon on a red background, the equivalent of which is located on the tower. The interest of those who were fascinated by wealth and reputation, those who spent 2 million on the Tower of Learning guide, gave impetus to the development of this profession. In front of the guy in armor you can see a huge green wave with a cube inside. He jumps, putting his foot forward, and the wave that is the slime hits the ground. The guy lands on his feet and rests one hand on the floor surface. With an angry look, he runs towards the monster, raising his fist. The guy hits the cube with all his strength. He breaks the green wave and its drops scatter to the sides. The guy breathes heavily and looks at the cube. In front of him is this cube, which is the core of the slime, as well as 2 jars with green liquid, that is, slime. The guy angrily shouts curses. He furrows his brows, raises his hands, squeezing his fingers a little, and yells that he caught them with great difficulty. But the weapon did not even fall to him. This is T-Shik, who is trying to pass the test for the 10th time. T-Shik exclaims that others get their weapons the first time, but he has very bad luck. The guy sits on the floor in front of the core in the slime, with his head down. He says that he cannot even use the dropped loot because of its toxicity, and this is already his 10th attempt, and he also spent 2,000 on guides. T-Shik lies down on the floor, spreading his legs and arms and closing his eyes. He decides he just needs to get some rest. The guy opens his eyes and relaxes his facial muscles. T-Shik notes that it was not in vain that he tried so hard and can sleep for a couple of hours. Suddenly, he throws his head back in surprise, assuming that someone else has come. T-Shik grins arrogantly and says that now everyone comes to the tower. He asks if the guy decided to come to the tower without equipment. He sees Wu Jin in normal clothes. T-Shik assumes that this is all a joke to him. Wu Jin looks around in surprise. He says that they were transported to another dimension in a second, and it is much more convenient than it was in Chungwon. The girl crosses her arms in front of her chest and confirms this, noting that the cook is different from the locals even in his clothes. Wu Jin agrees thoughtfully. The guy looks at the stone wall, thinking that he regained his memories a long time ago, but still hasn't gotten used to this place. Wu Jin stands in the middle of the hall and watches people. He looks at everyone and remembers their clothes. A tan man with a short haircut points his finger forward. He screams to take it before someone steals it. Someone exclaims that Hyung understood. Wu Jin stands rubbing his chin with his fingers as a green slime approaches him from behind. The spirit shouts a warning to him that there is a monster behind him. He puts out his hand, cutting the slime. The spirit girl looks at him in surprise. Wu Jin thinks that maybe he should put on armor because he has a long way to go and he needs to be more careful. Wu Jin looks questioningly at the table in front of him, and on the floor, near him, lies a slime core, slime and a gray sword. The information on it says that an ingredient is missing from the recipe, and the question is whether Wu Jin will accept it. The guy looks around at the objects lying on the floor near him. He realizes that they seem to be referring to what fell out of the slime. An angry scream is heard that offends Wu Jin. There are 3 guys in front of him, one of whom is standing behind him with a bat, and in front is a plump guy with brown hair and blonde hair. They say they advise Wu Jin to leave. The blonde asks him not to think that they will let him take the item. Wu Jin pays no attention and, folding his arms over his chest, looks at the table. And the blonde man clenches his fist angrily, standing behind the guy. Wu Jin reflects on the fact that he missed an ingredient from the recipe, and the blonde angrily asks if Wu Jin is listening to them. The fat guy and his friend look at Wu Jin with contempt. The blonde tells him not to be stubborn and leave in an amicable way. And the plump guy tells Wu Jin that young Shin himself is talking to him, and assumes that he doesn't see this. He notes that outside the tower he would be afraid to even look him in the eye. Spirit nervously looks back at Wu Jin and calls out to him. He stands with his arms folded on his chest and thinks that he doesn't like all this. The guy looks to the side and swipes his new sword through the air. Wu Jin realizes that everyone in Chungwon was shaking in fear at the sight of him. The guy notes that this sword is not bad. He planted his lips a little with the words that this sword is suitable for conquering the tower. The blonde looks at Wu Jin nervously. The plump guy clenches a fist with one hand and holds a stone with the other. The third guy frowns and holds a weapon in his hand. The overweight guy looks worriedly at the man with the gun, Hyun, and asks if they should really fight Wu Jin. He winces a little and adds that if they like them, they can heal outside, but the likelihood of passing the tower will be reduced. The fat guy notes that they spent 600 on it. The man looks forward angrily. The brown hair guy says they might just catch another slime. He orders him to shut up and adds that they must surround Wu Jin. The guys stand in fighting stances, ready to fight. Hyun says that it doesn't matter whether he has a sword or not, because there are more of them anyway. The man advises them to stop talking nonsense. Wu Jin looks around and there are guys standing behind him on either side. He thinks about how they surrounded him, and it's very banal. The guy looks at them arrogantly. Behind him stands a blonde and a plump guy, and in front is Hyun. Wu Jin concludes that they only seem to know basic battle strategies. Hyun swings his stick-like weapon sharply, and his expression becomes angry and determined. He shouts that he needs to strike now. Wu Jin turns and swings his sword once so that the weapon falls out of Hyun's hands and he throws his head back. The man is confused, his nose is bleeding, and drops of blood are flying to the sides. The guys jump out of their seats and run to Hyun, calling him. Something flashes near Wu Jin. He looks at his opponent with a terrifying gaze. The guy stops the stick with one hand. Wu Jin pushes her forward, hitting the blonde in the face. The fat guy stands behind Wu Jin, watching this in surprise and confusion. He looks up, noticing a stick flying there. Her shadow falls on the confused guy. He asks Wu Jin to wait. The fat guy looks up at Wu Jin, who is twirling the stick. He wants to ask him to negotiate. However, Wu Jin pushes the stick so that it slams right into the face of the guy with brown hair, who falls to the floor. The spirit girl covers herself a little with her hands and looks at what is happening in fear. She asks in surprise what is going on. The girl looks at the guys lying on the floor and thinks about what just happened. Wu Jin looks back at the guys sternly. He says that in the past he would have cut off their heads for such insolence. The guy thinks that now they are not in Chungwon, and he is no longer a heavenly demon. Wu Jin sighs and turns away from his opponents. He understands that he needs to follow the rules of this world. The guy calmly tells them to live. Wu Jin walks in spirit along the corridor of the learning tower, with torches hanging on the walls. The guy concludes that only he can see the spirit. She replies that this is indeed so, and other contractors can also see her. In front of Wu Jin is a table with information about obtaining the ingredient and a question. He looks at the girl and wonders if there will be problems if he accepts this. She replies that although he is not a hunter yet, he can accept. Wu Jin presses the agree button. Information appears on the table that he has received slime, which can be used in recipes. Wu Jin thinks about it. He looks at the table puzzled and realizes that he recently received these items and decides to take a look. The table contains information that for slime pudding you need 15 slimes, 10 slime cores, but there is no right to open the recipe. The spirit looks pitifully at Wu Jin and folds his hands in front of him. She explains that she talked about this yesterday, and the reason is that he is still an unofficial hunter. The girl doesn't want this to happen. She remembers with horror the man who shouted that this was an insult to cooking. The guys who said that these were not secret culinary notes, but the notes of a killer, because if you make them, you can die. She also remembers a guy who was sick because of this food. The girl looks ahead doomedly, thinking that she spent a lot of effort on finding the right person, and of all her contractors, Wu Jin is the most suitable. The girl closes her eyes in frustration, thinking that she is sure that Wu Jin will be able to reveal the true taste of her dishes. Spirit firmly decides that he cannot let Wu Jin go. The girl screams so loudly that it hits the ears of Wu Jin, who looks at her in surprise. The guy is about to offer something, and the spirit exclaims that he cannot break their contract. Wu Jin looks at her questioningly and worriedly, and the spirit doomedly covers its face with its hands. She asks him not to do this. Wu Jin looks at the girl with confusion, explaining that he just wanted to ask if it is possible to cook something that is not in the recipe. The spirit removes his hands from his face and asks again in surprise. The guy stands calmly and admits that he wants to cook something new and not follow other people's notes. The spirit, holding his hands in front of him, plaintively suggests that this means that he does not want to break the contract. Wu Jin replies that he didn't even think about it and tells her not to worry. The spirit reports that she thought he was upset because he didn't have rights. Wu Jin sighs and looks at the table. He says that it is, of course, unpleasant, but not very disturbing. The girl smiles and wipes tears from her eyes. She apologizes and explains that she has met different people, but Wu Jin is the first one who decided to cook without a recipe. They keep going and decide they won't know until they try. Wu Jin looks around warily, noticing something. He looks seriously at the dark corridor, realizing that someone is following them. A guy in a brown coat stands leaning against the wall and looking to the side. A shadow falls on his face. The guy sees Wu Jin with spirit. He realizes that it is the spirit of the secret notes and wonders what the spirit of the secret notes is doing in the learning tower. Frowning his eyebrows, the guy with black hair looks at them silently and warily. Wu Jin takes some of the slime from the jar with her finger. The spirit puts his hands to his cheeks and opens his eyes wide in fear, and Wu Jin puts the mucus in his mouth. She shouts that the guy shouldn't eat this. The girl looks at Wu Jin worriedly, explaining that the slimes contain poison and it may not kill Wu Jin, but it will definitely poison him. The guy ignores this and, closing his eyes, chews the mucus, and the spirit looks at him questioningly. Wu Jin turns to the girl who called him. The guy calmly looks at her and says that when you just bite into it, you feel the sweetness, and then the dish gives off something bitterly spicy. With his hands down, the spirit looks at Wu Jin in surprise. She doesn't understand how it happened that he was okay. The guy notes that, in general, this can be made into a dessert or used as a marinade for meat. The spirit wipes the sweat from his face with his finger. She is relieved to conclude that he is fine, which is good. The girl asks what Wu Jin is going to cook. He looks ahead thoughtfully. He understands that it is poison. Wu Jin raises her hand, which bursts into flames. He decides he can get rid of the poison by frying it. The guy looks at the slime on his hand. Wu Jin's hand emits blue light, which is cold, which wraps around the mucus. The guy decides to cool her down. He takes the slime in his hand and looks at it carefully, noting that it has hardened. Wu Jin takes a bite of it, looking at the remaining piece. He closes his eyes and silently chews the mucus. Spirit folds his palms in front of him and looks at Wu Jin in admiration. The guy says that he has decided that he will cook. Wu Jin turns her head towards the spirit. He says he will prepare Ekin. The surprised girl asks if he is sure. Looking ahead where the waves of mucus appear, Wu Jin replies that he is sure. He says he will need a lot of ingredients. There is a burning torch hanging on the wall. A guy with a brown coat looks at the corridor, along which weapons such as an old axe, a bat with nails, an old saber, a stuck club, and a sword are scattered. He thinks about it and realizes that this is strange. The guy picks up a spear and examines it. He thinks that this spear is not very good, but surprisingly it is made of a good alloy. The guy looks at the floor, holding a spear in his hand. He realizes that the guy left all the items and only took the slime byproducts. The guy wonders what the one who did this is thinking about. He thinks about slime and slime core. The guy realizes that weapons don't drop out every time, and byproducts happen all the time, but he's only interested in the parts of the slime. He looks at the floor worriedly, wondering why this is so. The guy raises his head, looking ahead and thinking that the poison contained in the core and mucus of the slime causes inflammation of the intestines, and there is only one reason why he hunts them. A golden puzzle piece sparkles against a blue background. The guy understands that the reason is a hidden element in the learning tower, although it has not yet been fully revealed. He squints and frowns, wanting to guess something. His expression becomes frightened and surprised. The guy assumes that the future has already changed, and this is impossible. He takes off and begins to quickly run down the corridor. The guy remembers Wu Jin with spirit. He understands that this is a contractor for secret recordings, and he has not seen him here before, and he needs to hurry. In front of him is the entrance to another hall. He runs there, holding a spear in his hand. The guy is trying to catch his breath and seriously looks ahead. Wu Jin turns to look at him. He sees different weapons on the floor, and a guy with a spirit is standing in front. Wu Jin looks back at the guy in surprise, and the spirit calls him. Now Wu Jin understands who was chasing them. He calmly looks at the guy in the brown coat and mentally decides that everything is clear now. He looks at him anxiously and defiantly. The spirit lights up next to Wu Jin and he realizes that this guy sees his spirit. Wu Jin still looks at the guy silently, thinking about how he does it. The guy in the brown coat grits his teeth, thinking about Wu Jin. He watches as Wu Jin leaves the weapon and picks up the slime jar. The guy realizes that he left all the items and took only parts of the slime. Wu Jin points to the jar and looks at the spirit. The guy in the coat thinks that he doesn't know what records this spirit owns, but the guy is definitely a contractor, because it's noticeable from his frivolous behavior. He glares at Wu Jin, furrowing his eyebrows. The guy wonders how Wu Jin managed to become a contractor without a hunter's license. It represents dark, scary silhouettes against the backdrop of the red moon. The guy understands that only they could allow an ordinary guy to enter into an agreement with secret records. His expression becomes surprised. He suddenly assumes that this guy is with them. He looks fearfully at Wu Jin, standing opposite him with a sword in his hand. Wu Jin turns around and looks at the guy sternly. He raises his hands, as if giving up. He explains that he was alarmed by the appearance of a person here, so he decided to check. The guy looks at Wu Jin worriedly, noting that there is already a lot of competition in the training tower, and he has no intention of fighting Wu Jin. He thinks that the spirit doesn't choose just anyone, but for some reason he doesn't remember this guy. He suggests that Wu Jin might interfere with his plans. The guy looks at him intently, realizing that he doesn't want to arouse suspicion. But he can't close his eyes to it either. He decides to find out the reason why Wu Jin only collects slime byproducts. Wu Jin closes his eyes and exhales. He reports that according to the rules, participants should not attack each other, but few people follow this. Wu Jin looks seriously at the guy in the coat. He still holds his hands up and looks forward. His expression becomes wary. He's trying to figure out what to do since Wu Jin is coming here. He actually steps towards him. The guy in the coat tightens his grip on the spear in his hand. He assumes that this guy is really with them. Wu Jin smiles, extends her hand and introduces herself. He raises an eyebrow in surprise. Wu Jin continues to smile kindly. The guy in the coat also extends his hand and introduces himself. Wu Jin replies that it's nice to meet you. Sung Jun stands silently, looking at Wu Jin worriedly. He smiles calmly, and a spirit flies around him. Sung Jun scratches the back of his head, looking up awkwardly. He asks if Wu Jin sees this by chance. He wonders what exactly the guy means. Sung Jun looks back and points his finger back to the floor where the weapon is. He says that there is a lot of equipment lying around and suggests that it is strange. Wu Jin asks if it should be like that. Sung Jun thinks about the slimes and the weapons that fall out of him. He says that in the training tower, slimes are killed to obtain equipment. The guy asks what's the point of fighting if a person doesn't take it. Wu Jin looks at Sung Jun in surprise and says that he killed the slimes. Sung Jun, seeing a strange person in the guy, asks again. He looks at Wu Jin in fear, not understanding why he is acting this way. He wonders who Wu Jin is since he didn't hide it. Sung Jun assumes that he made a mistake and the guy is not on the same page with them. He looks at Wu Jin sternly, knowing that they usually don't reveal their identities to just anyone, and they don't need to attract unnecessary attention. Wu Jin, who has a spirit hiding behind his head, looks at Sung Jun with confusion. He is trying to understand what the guy's purpose is if he is not with them. Sung Jun smiles and scratches his head, noting that Wu Jin is tough and it probably won't be difficult for him to conquer the tower. He smiles, closes his eyes and sticks out his index finger. Sung Jun announces that he will go, and Wu Jin agrees and bids him farewell. The guy leaves with an indifferent face, thinking that there is a high probability that he is not cooperating with them. Sung Jun wonders why Wu Jin needs slime byproducts then. A golden puzzle element glows against a dark background. Sung Jun knows that the secret element of the learning tower will not be revealed until 20 years later, but perhaps Wu Jin knows about it too. He looks around, looking seriously behind him, wanting to guess something. The entire city is burning with a bright flame, from which a terrible dark silhouette can be seen. 30 years later the world collapsed. He has a miracle that he received before he died. A man in armor sits on a stone surface, and in front of him, in the sky, a golden silhouette appears, around which light shines. A return is taking place. A man with green hair and a wound on his face looks up. Thanks to this, Sung Jun returned 30 years ago, but this is the first time he sees this guy. He assumes that Wu Jin also got a chance if he is not with them. The guy looks back at Wu Jin. Turning away, Sung Jun continues to walk towards the exit of the hall. He understands that this is impossible, and he is simply haunted by stupid thoughts. Sung Jun looks ahead with determination and decides that he better focus on the mission. He knows that he will not have time to complete all his plans if a hidden item is in the mail. Wu Jin looks at the exit where Sung Jun recently came out. He smiles easily, looking away. Wu Jin doesn't know who this guy is, but decides he's pretty weak. He remembers the moment when he stood in front of him. Wu Jin realizes that aside from the handshake, Sung Jun was trying to keep distance between them. He remembers the look on the guy's face as he tried to remain calm. Wu Jin assumes that Sung Jun is up to something, since he even pretended not to see his spirit. Wu Jin smiles calmly and looks after him, remembering the guy's name. Sung Jun frowns and looks ahead with displeasure. He assumes that he is the same as him. Wu Jin looks at the floor of the corridor, where the remains of the slime and weapons lie. He says it's great. The guy holds a jar of mucus in front of him. Wu Jin says all the ingredients have been collected. He looks at the chart, which says he has 97 pieces of slime and 68 pieces of slime core. The guy decides that this should be enough. Wu Jin looks around, looking around the hall. He notes that it is quite clean. The guy looks at the surprised girl. Wu Jin tells her to start cooking. She looks questioningly at the guy and remains silent. The guy calmly looks at the uncomprehending spirit and asks for a saucepan. She wonders what he means. Wu Jin shrugs and closes his eyes. He explains that he needs somewhere to cook, and since the girl is the spirit of the secret culinary knowledge of the dungeon, she should know where to cook here. The spirit opens its eyes wide and points its finger forward. She exclaims that she completely forgot about something. A green glowing circle appears in front of her finger. A pan appears in space, around which everything glows green. The girl exclaims that Wu Jin is right and she will take care of the devices, because she can call on them at any time. A uniform and a spatula appear in front of Wu Jin. He asks the girl to get another spatula, preferably a silicone one with a quadrangular shape. The spirit fulfills his request, pointing his hands at the devices that appear. The guy rolls up his sleeves contentedly, standing in front of the table. Wu Jin says we can start. He takes the slime core in one hand and the slime in the other. The guy decides that he will cook Liu Yekan, because it was the easiest for him to find the ingredients. Wu Jin looks at the core, which has a ball inside, thinking that since the inside of the core is glowing, there is a chance that its taste in the dish will be different, so we need to come up with something. Wu Jin holds a sieve in her hand through which the slime flows out, leaving only balls. He decides to try to make a liquid mass and draw a pattern on top. The guy puts the cube on the board and starts cutting it. Wu Jin realizes that the kernel itself is hard, so the best solution is to cut it up and use it like tapioca. A green liquid is boiling in a saucepan. Wu Jin decides to boil the slime liquid to get rid of the poison. The guy pours it into a wooden rectangular mold, voicing his action. The spirit watches in surprise at what Wu Jin is doing. The green liquid is evenly distributed over the mold. The guy says that now you need to let it harden and now add the chopped kernels. He pours the diced kernel from the board into the mold, and the spirit looks on admiringly. Wu Jin thinks about what he adds to the yakan with the edges slightly hardened, and the inside of the kernel should be dissolved in the pan, because it will add flavor. The guy looks at the pan with the green liquid and understands that the main thing is not to overcool it, otherwise the texture will be wrong. He pours the liquid from the pan into the mold, thinking that now is the perfect time to do it. Wu Jin stirs the liquid in the mold. He does this to create patterns, and this also adds texture and flavor to the dish. The guy understands that the main thing is not to overdo it. Wu Jin raises her hands over the form of liquid and is surrounded by light blue rays. The guy uses chilling cold. He takes the form into his hands quite contentedly. Wu Jin says that now they need to turn the mold over and take out the dish. A green rectangular dish appears in front of him. The guy exclaims that the slime ekin is ready. He looks contentedly at his work, and the spirit admires the dish. The girl turns in his direction and clenches her fists. In anticipation, she asks him to cut the dish faster. Information appears on the table that cooking is complete. A new recipe has been registered and you need to check the rank. The rank is determined. Wu Jin and the spirit look at the table in surprise. It says that information about the yakan from Mr. Wu Jin's slime is being downloaded, and the result is being checked. An image of a slime yakan appears on the table and information that it has a rank of F. Wu Jin looks at the table in fear, and the spirit awkwardly scratches the back of his head. The guy realizes that the information on the table indicates that his cooking is rank F. The spirit tries to calm him down and suggests that the test is not over yet. Information appears on the table that the author of the dish is Wu Jin, and the quality is still being assessed. It also explains that the dish is prepared by the dungeon's chef, Wu Jin, and is simple to make. The spirit asks whether the result of quality has not yet come out. Wu Jin looks at the table upset. He suggests that quality is more important than rank, and the spirit agrees with this. The table says that the level is increasing. Wu Jin looks at the many tables that appeared in front of him. It says that the peculiar recipe and first course achievements have been achieved, experience points have been received, and the level has increased. Wu Jin is surprised to realize that the quality level of his dish is level. Information appears on the table that for the achievements achieved, restrictions on recipes have been lifted. The spirit looks at this in surprise and covers its mouth with its hands. She congratulates Wu Jin, noting that it's incredible that the guy received such a rating. Wu Jin stares blankly at the table. He asks if what the girl just said is true. She exclaims that of course it is. The spirit raises its hand, and with it the knife rises. She asks if she can explain about the rank and quality that Wu Jin was interested in while she eats. The guy cuts the dish, and the spirit smiles contentedly. Wu Jin says he doesn't care. The girl exclaims that this is great. She bites the slime ekin and wishes herself a bon appetit. The spirit closes its eyes and clenches its fists. She exclaims that it is simply incredible and very tasty. The girl states that entering into an agreement with Wu Jin was the best decision. He smiles contentedly and folds his arms over his chest. The spirit explains that quality evaluates the taste of the dish. She thumbs up at images of mouth-watering dishes. The girl reports that level A is refined, and all luxury dishes are included in it. Wu Jin asks about rank. The spirit remembers how the guy cut the kernel and poured the green slime liquid into the mold. She explains that the rank indicates the complexity of the dish, and this dish is easy to prepare, which is why the rating is like that. The spirit holds an eken in his hands and chews. She says that the higher the rank in quality, the more points they give. The girl says that you can also get it by completing achievements. Woo Jin also chews his dish and analyzes it. He likes that weakness is replaced by a balance of sour and sweet. The guy thinks that he added the slime core to maintain the texture of the dish, and it was the right decision. The joyful spirit flies up to the surprised Woo Jin. She exclaims that now the guy can use other recipes and congratulates him. The girl reports that the recipes are the pride of secret culinary records. The spirit smiles and holds a table with his hands, which says that the cooking skill is at the 4th level. It also says that the slime pudding recipe is worth 25 points, the slime foca is worth 50 points, and the slime stew is worth 35 points. The spirit explains that recipes can be exchanged for points, and there are many different recipes. Woo Jin looks at the table and thoughtfully rubs his chin with his fingers. The guy wonders what to cook now. The spirit looks at him in surprise, thinking that, most likely, Woo Jin was not happy about this, because he was able to cook it without a recipe. The guy scratches his chin and looks at the table, puzzled. He notes that there are not enough glasses to open everything. The spirit says that he received a lot to begin with. A man on a red background with arrows raises his hands, and dishes are located near him. The spirit explains that the remaining recipes can be opened after completing the quest, and at first there will be simple dishes, and then more and more complex ones. Woo Jin looks at the girl in surprise. He concludes that he went against the rules. The spirit, smiling, confirms this. Woo Jin stands in front of the tables with information. The girl explains that if you follow the standard method, you first need to complete the quest, accumulate enough points, and then open the recipes. She says that you need to cook strictly according to the recipe to get a high mark, and for a high mark you get more points. The spirit exclaims that the higher the level, the more recipes. She awkwardly looks down at her outstretched index fingers. The girl states that this is the first time this has happened. The spirit is surprised that the new recipe received such a rating and was also given so many points. Woo Jin looks at the table, thinking. He assumes it's because he came up with the dish himself. Spirit exclaims that it is, so Woo Jin can continue like this. The guy looks at the wall where the remains of the slime lie. He thinks that only a hunter can receive the secret records quest, and he needs to quickly clear the tower in order to become one. Woo Jin's serious gaze is directed to one point. The guy thinks that he can get new ingredients, but he can't just leave. Woo Jin turns and the spirit flies towards him. The guy offers to try other dishes. He realizes that there are still about 15 days until the training tower closes. On the 2nd floor of the training tower, several spears are flying along the corridor. Woo Jin easily brushes it off with his sword. Everything is different here, the traps become more complex. Woo Jin walks along the floor, and below you can see the thorns. Slimes develop features that make hunting more difficult. Woo Jin cuts green, red, and yellow slime. Even those who easily pass the 1st floor must be very careful here, but for Woo Jin this was not a problem. On the table are empty jars with red liquid, a pink slime core, a pan with red liquid inside, and a chopped slime core. For Woo Jin this was not a problem because he is one of those who goes towards his goal no matter what. The guy pours liquid from a saucepan into a jar. Information about Woo Jin's red slime jam appears on the table. It says that the rank of the dish is D, and the quality is at level B. The table contains information that the reward will be given depending on the result, and the level increases. The spirit holds the jar with one hand, and with the other takes some jam and puts it in his mouth. She says that Woo Jin broke the stereotype that jam should be sweet. The girl notes that this is an unusual interpretation. The guy sadly replies that this time it's a failure. The spirit that was released in the jam looks at him in surprise. The girl asks what he means and where this perfect dish failed. The spirit adds that during these 10 days he prepared a lot of dishes. With his lips pursed and his brows furrowed, Woo Jin looks ahead as an anxious spirit flies around him. The girl exclaims that the level of secret recordings has increased, and she managed to get as many as 15 points. Woo Jin suggests that he is not that good. The guy covers his mouth with his hand and thinks that it's probably all about the lack of food. He realizes that he has explored both floors in 10 days. Woo Jin remembers the colorful slimes and thinks that on the 1st floor there are only green slimes, but on the 2nd there are more. The guy understands that taste depends on the type, and that's all. Woo Jin holds a jar of jam in his hand and raises his head doomedly, closing his eyes. The spirit looks anxiously at the guy, who regrets not taking at least some chocolate with him. The girl anxiously holds her head with one hand and remains silent. She forms a triangle with her hands and looks at Woo Jin seriously, about to say something. He calmly looks at the spirit, listening to her. The girl reports that this is the first time she has met such a capable cook, but without basic knowledge she cannot get good grades. Woo Jin stands in front of the table and turns her head towards the spirit. She agrees that it's important for a chef to have a passion for cooking, and Woo Jin has that, but he doesn't know anything about cooking in the dungeon. The girl washes her hands and looks at Woo Jin confused. She says she feels it's better now to focus on improving her skills rather than creating new recipes. Woo Jin smiles easily and thinks about the need to master the basics. He looks contentedly at the table, and the spirit covers his mouth with his hands in happiness. The guy agrees with her and decides to start from the first level. A list of recipes for dishes with slime appears on the table. Woo Jin pays attention to such a dish as Derbent with royal slime. He looks in surprise at the line with such an inscription. The guy clicks on this line, thinking that it sounds interesting. He says he wants it. The chart says that Woo Jin purchased a king slime sherbet recipe that contains 1 king slime and 1 king slime core, but these qualifying ingredients are not registered. With his hands folded in front of his chest, Woo Jin reads this in surprise. He realizes that the local slimes were definitely not like the royal ones, and suggests that he should leave the tower. The guy notices information that the location of the capture is the 3rd floor of the training tower. He looks at the table with this information, realizing that he already knows how to get to the 3rd floor. Woo Jin says everything is going according to plan, which is great. The guy walks along the tower, and the spirit flies behind him. Woo Jin says to go and the girl exclaims that she gets it. The guy decides that the next target is King Slime Sherbet. It is a clear day, there are buildings around, and on a green field there is a portal, around which a large number of people are crowding. This happens on the 10th day of the tower's passage, at Seoul City Hall. Someone notes that there are a lot of journalists here. People stand in anticipation near the portal, the entrance to the training tower. Someone is holding cameras. They say that today they will see the one who first conquered the 3rd floor. Among all these people, there is a guy with glasses with gray hair, and next to him is a taller guy, in a green jacket and with blonde hair. The guy with glasses notes that he wouldn't be surprised if he was already taken into the guild. His friend disagrees, saying they would have noticed. The guy with glasses replies that this is also true. Both look forward in surprise. The blonde is interested in who will come out first, and the guy with glasses says to watch, because someone is coming out. The girl in a black tracksuit and a white trowel comes out of the portal, holding a weapon in her hand. One of them reports that this is the only daughter of the head of the Heavenly Wing, and this guild is now ranked 2nd in the country. The girl's name is Salha. She is surrounded by journalists with cameras and microphones. They greet her, ask if she will join her father's guild, and ask her to tell her about her impressions of conquering the tower. Salha sighs and closes her eyes. She tells them to set up a time with her agent if anyone wants to interview her. 2 guys stand a little further from the main crowd and watch what is happening. The guy with glasses notes that this is very unfair. The blonde is interested in why he thinks so. Salha, the girl with her hair, walks past the journalists, looking ahead calmly and confidently. The guy says that she is beautiful, talented, and is also the heir to the Sky Wing. The blonde advises him to look at who is best to recruit. He clutches the strap of his bag and clenches his teeth, and his friend smiles. A guy with glasses asks if someone will join their 3rd-rate guild. The blonde replies that this is quite possible, because many people join similar guilds, and then make them the strongest. The guy with gray hair adjusts his glasses and says that they should be here for the next 4 days, because most of the promising participants come out on the 10th day, and on the 13th day those who go on defense come out. The guys look in surprise after Salha, who looks upset. The guy with glasses notes that on the 14th day they come out completely unlucky, and few people will take such people. Blue slimes fly around the tower. Woo Jin confidently walks forward, swinging his sword, and behind him can be seen the large red slime he just cut. The guy turns around, and drops of red slime fly past him. His expression becomes serious. The guy notes that the 3rd floor is very different from the previous ones. There is a floor diagram on a yellow background. Woo Jin realizes that this floor is more like connecting rooms. Suddenly, Woo Jin notices something and looks away. He sees an entrance that shimmers blue. The guy notes that this entrance is different from the others and suggests that this is a special room. He begins to walk towards this entrance. Woo Jin comes out and sees a clearing and forest around him. The guy and the spirit look ahead in surprise. Woo Jin realizes that there seems to be a forest inside the tower. The spirit looks around in amazement and asks whether they came out of the tower or are outside. Against the background of the blue sky, Plants move in the wind. Yellow and red slimes crawl through the forest near the trees and bushes. Wu calmly looks in front of him and reports that this is not so and that he should look elsewhere. The guys see a stone building with lights on the sides. They realize that this is a slime altar. Wu Jin looks questioningly at the table that appeared in front of him. It says that he can obtain the ingredient for King Slime Sherbet at a certain location, but it will require a special method and it requires 20 dungeon points to remove the limit. Wu Jin wonders if he is sure. He presses the button, which means he is confident. The guy thinks that the royal slime is definitely here. The table says that information is being loaded. With his arms folded across his chest, Wu Jin watches in surprise what is happening on the table. He understands that there are quite a few convenient features here. Suddenly, Wu Jin looks around, noticing something. Sung Jun leans on the wall of the entrance to the hall, where there is a forest and a clearing. Wu Jin notes that Sung Jun came too. He tries to catch his breath and says that he has finally reached it. Sung Jun looks ahead angrily. He wonders how long it took him. Suddenly, the guy notices Wu Jin. Sung Jun looks at the guy who turns to him. He remembers Wu Jin's name. He assumes that Wu Jin has come for the secret element. Wu Jin smiles widely and closes her eyes. He notes that Sung Jun has already reached the 3rd floor. He awkwardly scratches the back of his head and smiles. He agrees with the words that the opportunity should not be missed. Sung Jun says that Wu Jin is also great for coming here. Wu Jin smiles and looks away, telling him that he wants to get something here. Sung Jun decides it's true. He looks at the smiling Wu Jin and the spirit next to him. Sung Jun deduces that Wu Jin came here for the hidden element. The guy sits down by the tree, exhaling. He says that he understands, and now he will rest a little. Sung Jun wants to see what Wu Jin will do. Spirit looks interestedly at Wu Jin, who is scratching his chin. The girl asks if he wants to immediately summon the royal slime. He replies that first we need to find other ingredients. Sung Jun stares at Wu Jin, thinking that he wants to collect items to summon the king slime. Information about the sacrifice for summoning the royal slime appears on the table. The location is the altar of the royal slime on the 3rd floor of the training tower. It says that 200 slime cores are required, as well as 200 pieces of slime. The table contains information that after eliminating the king slime, he will receive the ingredients for sherbet with king slime. Sung Jun realizes that he has 4 more days. He looks angrily at Wu Jin, who also looks forward, but quite calmly. Sung Jun decides to watch him for now and then take the boss away at the right moment. The guy understands that he also needs to collect slimes for the call. On the 12th day of passing the tower, Wu Jin boldly walks forward, cutting the slimes, and the spirit flies behind him, watching in surprise. Wu Jin looks around calmly, seeing red slime, slime liquid, and red slime liquid. The spirit folds its palms in front of itself and closes its eyes contentedly. Wu Jin clicks something on the table while Sung Jun watches him from behind a tree. Wu Jin continues to walk around, easily cutting the slimes, while Sung Jun looks at him. On the 13th day of passing the tower, Wu Jin looks at the girl sitting on his shoulder with his mouth slightly open. She looks at him joyfully, closing her eyes. Sung Jun looks at Wu Jin with displeasure and remains silent. On the 14th day of passing the tower, Sung Jun looks up, thinking that today is the last day and tomorrow the tower will close. Wu Jin sits down near the bush, examining it carefully. Sung Jun, watching from behind a tree, knows that if he doesn't find the hidden element, he'll have to wait another 3 months, and he can't waste time. The guy frowns and looks at Wu Jin with displeasure. Sung Jun reflects that all this time he has only been collecting slime byproducts, and he should have fulfilled the conditions for summoning the boss a long time ago. Wu Jin and the spirit look in the same direction, contentedly eating the blue dish. Sung Jun thinks that Wu Jin doesn't want to summon the boss while he's around, and even the slime's poison doesn't work on him. The spirit licks his lips and uses a spoon to break off a piece of blue slime marmalade. Sung Jun suggests that this is a recipe for secret recordings that allows you to cook food from monsters, and if he is right, then it's clear how Wu Jin has lasted so long. Sung Jun lowers his head a little and closes his eyes. He understands that now is not the time to think about it, and he needs to find a way to kill the boss. Wu Jin walks through the clearing, and a spirit flies nearby, attracting. Sung Jun realizes that over the past 4 days, Wu Jin has only left here a couple of times, only to return within an hour or 2. Wu Jin looks away in surprise. Sung Jun is indignant that he doesn't even know the exact time, as if he were playing a game. He understands that there is no other way, so he needs to deal with all this in Wu Jin's absence. Sung Jun stares at him, knowing that he will be gone for at least 30 minutes. There is a stone slime altar in the forest. Sung Jun wonders if he can kill the boss during this time and get the hidden elements. The guy looks after Wu Jin warily. He understands that the more he thinks, the more he misses. Sung Jun decides to summon the king slime once Woo Jin leaves. The guy looks around, holding a bag in his hand. He thinks that he has all the ingredients and just has to wait for Woo Jin to leave. Sung Jun sees the guy leaving, chatting with the spirit, and decides now is the time. He breaks away and quickly runs forward, holding a weapon in one hand and a bag in the other. Sung Jun waves the bag. Many jars of slime products fly out of it and fall onto the altar. Sung Jun decides to start. He breathes heavily and looks seriously at the altar. The guy goes up the steps there. The altar is illuminated by a bright golden light. Sung Jun looks ahead with determination towards his goal. A black ball with a crown appears in the air above the altar. He lands on the ground, breaking it so that pieces of earth fly into the air. Sung Jun covers his face with his hand due to the strong air flow. The black ball takes the form of an ordinary slime and moves towards Sung Jun. The slime hits the ground and the sand flies off to the side. Woo Jin suddenly realizes something. The spirit looks at him in surprise. He looks sternly to the side, informing him that he needs to return to the altar. The slime hits the ground, but Sung Jun jumps away. He fights deftly with his weapons. The guy puts it forward, looking angrily at the enemy. A hole will form in the slime. Sung Jun grins nervously, realizing that the attacks are going through the slime. He stands in a fighting stance in front of the slime, holding a spear in his hands. Sung Jun thinks that even though he came from the future, his strength was not preserved, and now his advantage is knowledge. The slime begins to glow red and the space around it fills with red. Sung Jun realizes that saving the world from destruction will not be so easy. The guy leans down and runs forward to attack. He jumps towards his opponent and realizes that he has been training hard all this time. A long beam of his slime shoots out from the slime and hits the ground. Sung Jun swings his spear and looks somewhere in surprise. The guy decides to use mana to create a shell around himself. He hits the slime with all his strength. A hole appears there. The guy stands on one of the parts of the slime. Sung Jun annoyedly notes that he slipped away again. The guy jumps to the side, and the slime goo rushes towards him. Sung Jun glares at his opponent, thinking that he trained a lot to improve his skills and obtain the secret element. The guy looks forward displeasedly, and part of the slime passes by him. He bends down to dodge, and Woo Jin stands near the trees, watching the battle. The guy smiles easily, and the spirit opens his mouth in surprise. Woo Jin realizes that Sung Jun is good. He sees the guy dodge and fight. Woo Jin notes that Sung Jun is not trying to fight stupidly. The guy watches the deft movements, realizing that he dodges and then counterattacks. He also notes that in this world they are the same age, but Sung Jun's skills do not match his age. Sung Jun stands in front of the monster, waving his weapon. Woo Jin looks at the battle in surprise and feels the faint energy that envelops Sung Jun's spear. He decisively looks at the enemy with his spear thrust forward. Woo Jin assumes that he is a spearman. He looks at Sung Jun contentedly, raising his eyebrows slightly. The guy thinks that despite his weak energy, Sung Jun's skills are at the level, and in his time the guy would have been respected. The spirit happily boxes in the air, exclaiming that now is the time to catch the king slime. Woo Jin calmly looks forward and doesn't move. He replies that he will not do this because it is ugly. Woo Jin remembers Seon Ho coming home and sitting angry at the table complaining to Woo Jin. The guy says he remembers how angry Sun Ho was when his boss was stolen. He also remembers the 3 guys he saw at the beginning and notes that those guys were the same. He explains that he will not come out until the fight is over. Sung Jun runs past the slime, swinging his spear. The slime hits the ground and the guy jumps away. He lands on the ground, leaving dust in his wake. Woo Jin doesn't know how long Sung Jun trained, but he understands that it will be difficult for him to defeat the boss alone. He breathes heavily and looks to the side, realizing that the couple is already running out. Sung Jun notices something and his gaze turns serious. He runs forward, holding his spear in front of him. The guy understands that this is his last chance. Sung Jun extends his spear towards the slime core, thinking that he will get the hidden element if he pierces it. The guy looks at a black cube with a gray light around it. Sung Jun decides that the element will definitely be his. The guy, eyes wide open, looks ahead fearfully and questioningly. Sung Jun looks up, wondering what's going on. He sees Woo Jin standing calmly in the clearing with a sword in his hand. Sung Jun is surprised to realize that Woo Jin has already returned, and this cannot be. His attention turns to the guy, and his thoughts are focused on the fact that what he was doing all these days was just a game. At this time, the slime crashes into Sung Jun, throwing him back. Blood is oozing from his mouth. The slime stands in front of where Sung Jun landed. A guy sits by a tree, and everything around is shrouded in dust. With his head down and his spear weakly in his hand, Sung Jun realizes in frustration that he missed the attack because of Woo Jin. His spear sparkles in the Sunday to Sunday. June realizes that the wound is too big and he won't be able to get up. The guy continues to sit on the ground with his shoulders and head down. He thinks that he is not capable of more. Sung Jun's eyes are narrowed and blood is flowing from his forehead and mouth. He understands that he has been given a chance to change the future. The city is in devastation. Houses are collapsing and lanterns are reaching to the ground. Sung Jun decides that he was naive for thinking that he could do it. He remembers how he bent over a wounded girl wearing white and red clothes. Sung Jun places the spear on the ground, leaning on it. He decides that he needs to stop behaving like this. The guy looks forward angrily, his eyes glowing eerily red. Sung Jun realizes that if he dwells on the past, he won't be able to fix anything. The guy is kneeling and leaning on a spear. He thinks that when he lost, he always told himself that he should try harder, but now he wonders what the point is. Sung Jun grits his teeth angrily, determined that this won't happen again. He screams, and blue lines resembling veins appear on the guy's face. Sung Jun realizes that if he uses his life force, he can get up. The guy decides that he will do anything but give up. He points the spear at his opponent and it glows blue. Sung Jun wonders who will change the future if he loses. The guy decides that he simply must win. Pieces of grass fly up from the ground. The slime moves straight towards Sung Jun. Spitting blood out of his mouth, the guy realizes something. His eyebrows droop, and he holds the spear very weakly. The guy understands that he has no strength at all. He walks forward, trying not to fall, as the slime advances towards Sung Jun. The guy can't believe that this is the end. A beam of bright purple light hits the slime. Lying on the ground, Sung Jun rises a little. He wonders what happened. Sung Jun's eyes close on their own as a voice inside tells him to stand up. Sung Jun falls to the ground exhausted. Woo Jin looks at the guy with regret and remains silent. On the table in front of Woo Jin, information appears that he defeated the hidden boss, the King Slime. The rainbow core of the royal slime and the royal slime of the same color glow against a golden background. The spirit clenches his fists in admiration and exclaims that Woo Jin caught the slime the first time, but she didn't expect anything less from him. Woo Jin looks forward calmly, mentally apologizing to Sung Jun. He remembers the moment Sung Jun noticed him. Woo Jin understands that the guy missed the attack because of him, and with such a large wound it was impossible to continue the battle. The guy looks at how blue light spreads across Sung Jun's body. Woo Jin thinks that Sung Jun used too much energy and his body is in terrible condition. He wonders why the guy didn't run away, because he definitely would have had enough strength to escape. Woo Jin holds the slime core in his hands, looking at Sung Jun with regret. The guy wonders if he really wanted to get this cube. Sung Jun lies face down on the ground, bleeding. Woo Jin suggests that this is wrong and if he had not intervened, Sung Jun would have died. The guy looks at the cube with warmth and decides that he will accept it as gratitude. Woo Jin takes the slime liquid on her finger and tastes it. There is surprise on his face, and the spirit joyfully hugs the cube. Now Woo Jin understands what kind of royal slime he is. The guy looks at the food in amazement and raises his eyebrows. He remarks something about the taste. A durian lies on the grass, sparkling in the sun. Woo Jin realizes that despite the pungent smell, the fruit tastes sweet, and it is really tasty and somewhat similar to durian. The guy smiles and looks forward cheerfully. He thinks that it's not for nothing that this monster is the boss. Woo Jin realizes that he can't wait and wants to start cooking now. Suddenly, Woo Jin notices something. He thought that since this sherbet was made from king slime, the recipe would be complicated. Woo Jin looks at the chart, puzzled, rubbing her chin. He suggests that there is something missing in the recipe. The spirit, who holds the cube in her hands, angrily exclaims that this cannot be because there are no errors in the recipe. Woo Jin looks at the angry girl nervously. He agrees and says that he will start cooking. Rainbow slime is boiling in a saucepan. Woo Jin decides to first boil the mucus to make the taste more intense, and freeze the cube itself and grind it into powder. He holds the cube in his hand and a purple ball forms around it. While in the ball, the cube begins to break. Then, the cube turns into powder, but small whole pieces are still visible. Woo Jin notes that the cube was crushed well. The guy carefully watches his actions, realizing that this skill is simply created for cooking. He regrets that he had to use it against people in Chungwon. Woo Jin pours the powder into a large container with liquid. Because you need to add the powder to the mucus and mix well. The guy quickly stirs the liquid. The contents in the bowl are distributed unevenly, with slides. Woo Jin understands that the mass turned out to be surprisingly very viscous, and judging by the recipe, this can be done with any slime. The guy remembers how he stirred ordinary green slime. He thinks that last time he was unable to get such a consistency, and that means everything depends on the cooking method. The guy happily looks at his dish, realizing that it is interesting. He exclaims that the dish is ready. In front of them is a transparent container containing a rainbow mess. Woo Jin says it's king slime sherbet. Information about this dish appears on the table. It says that its rank is E+, and the quality is at level of the table. Also contains information that this is an original recipe from a dungeon chef of the legendary level. The properties of the slime were fully revealed thanks to the chosen method of preparation. Other tables appear with information that experience points have been received. The achievement is very rare. A reward will be given depending on the result. A level increase is occurring. 25 dungeon points and experience points have been received. Woo Jin smiles softly, closing her eyes. Smiling, he looks at the joyful girl. The guy asks her if they will try. The spirit exclaims that this must be done as quickly as possible. The spirit holds a spoon in his hand and Woo Jin holds the sherbet. Both look questioningly to the side. They see Sung Joon rubbing his face with his hand. The wounded guy raises his head. He wonders how long he was unconscious. Woo Jin looks at Sung Joon in amazement, thinking that he woke up earlier than he thought. He understands that the mana has not been restored at all. Wincing in pain, Sung Joon touches his side. He thinks that his whole body is on fire. Several ribs are broken, but he can move. Woo Jin looks at the frightened spirit. Sung Joon remembers the guy and decides that he definitely didn't imagine it. He remembers how Woo Jin easily destroyed the boss. The guy looked at Sung Joon calmly and a little confused. He realizes that he saw Woo Jin kill the king slime. Sung Joon looks at the red sherbet, realizing that there is a hidden element. Gritting his teeth, he looks ahead with displeasure, thinking that he was too inattentive. The spirit pulls the corner of Woo Jin's mouth as he tries to move her away from him. Sung Joon reflects that the hidden element of the learning tower ended up in Woo Jin's hands. He realizes that the hidden element appears only once. The guy sits and bows his head down, holding it with his hand. He is confident that he would not have lost if he had been more attentive. Sung Joon thinks about letting him fight the monster and then suddenly attacking him. The guy's head is filled with thoughts that he could have used his advantage in the form of weapons back then, on the first floor, or invited him to unite and then share the reward. Sung Joon realizes with disappointment that he is left with nothing. He holds his hand to his face and calms himself, deciding that all is not lost. The guy looks at the sherbet and thinks that if he were Woo Jin, he wouldn't share, so all that remains is to steal the dead element by force. He places his hand on the ground, leaning on it. Sung Joon stands up and glares at the guys, gritting his teeth and thinking about the hidden element. A sherbet appears in front of Sung Joon's confused face. Woo Jin bows in front of the guy, holding a sherbet in her hand. He tells Sung Joon to try too. He looks at the guy in confusion and is silent. Woo Jin looks at Sung Joon calmly and kindly. Sung Joon opens his mouth and opens his eyes wide in surprise. Woo Jin raises his hand and calmly asks Sung Joon to try it, because he's probably very tired. He hesitantly reaches out to the spoon. He thanks Woo Jin, but doesn't understand why the guy is sharing with him. Sung Joon takes a spoonful of the sherbet and decides that this is a great chance anyway. He wishes the guy bon appetit. Sung Joon puts the sherbet in his mouth, wondering what the reason is, but realizing that he should try, since in the training tower you can't kill people. Anyway, a bright flash passes through Sung Joon's body, which appears circular in some places. He looks at Woo Jin, who is happily munching on his food, thinking that he is the contractor for the hidden cooking records. Sung Joon doesn't understand why this tastes so bad. He looks fearfully at the sherbet remaining on the spoon. The guy assumes that Woo Jin prepared this to satisfy his hunger. Sung Joon doubts that it is food. He looks in surprise at Woo Jin holding his head and the spirit greedily eating sherbet. Sung Joon realizes that maybe the spirit tastes good because it's not a person, but he can't understand how Woo Jin can eat something like that. Sung Joon looks at the spoonful of sherbet, proving to himself that this is a small price to pay for the hidden element, and he should eat it for the sake of world peace. Sung Joon puts the sherbet in his mouth and winces, mentally telling himself to be patient. A table appears in front of him, which Sung Joon looks at very surprised. It says that Sung Joon ate sherbet from the king slime and absorbed its energy. Skill points are increased and mana is increased by 5 points. The guy sits down on the ground and looks at the table in confusion. He doesn't remember the hidden element increasing skill power. Sung Joon looks at the spirit as she greedily eats the sherbet. He suggests that this is the ability of the spirit of hidden recordings. Sung Joon looks fearfully at the floor, trying not to make eye contact with Woo Jin, who calls out to him. A blush appears on Woo Jin's face and he covers his mouth with his fist. The guy asks Sung Joon if he liked it. He thinks that Woo Jin was able to cook this from a monster, so he should be thanked. Sung Joon smiles nervously and raises his head. He exclaims that it was very tasty. Woo Jin smiles and asks again. Sung Joon awkwardly scratches the back of his head and smiles. He thanks Woo Jin for saving him. Woo Jin stands in front of Sung Joon sitting by the tree. He looks at the guy in fear, remembering this feeling. There is fear and anxiety in his eyes. Sung Joon understands that he must run. He looks at Woo Jin, who is rubbing his chin. Sung Joon decides that if he doesn't run away now, he'll give him something else to try. Woo Jin is about to say something. Sung Joon stands up with one hand on his knee and smiles. The guy thanks Woo Jin again for saving him and food. He happily folds his palms in front of him, wanting to say what else he has. Sung Joon sharply refuses. He starts to run away in a hurry, and Woo Jin and the spirit look at him in confusion. Sung Joon exclaims that he's already caused a lot of inconvenience, so it's not worth it. Woo Jin looks after the guy, smiling lightly. He notes in frustration that Sung Joon ran away, and the spirit says that he is truly incredible, and finally someone appreciated Woo Jin's cooking. The guy begins to walk on the grass, saying that perhaps they will see each other again. He turns to the spirit with a smile on his face. Woo Jin suggests looking at more ingredients since tomorrow is the last day. The girl happily agrees. In the Seoul City Hall, in a green clearing near the city buildings, there is an entrance to the learning tower. At this time, there are 2 hours left before the training tower closes. A hand reaches forward from the blue portal. Woo Jin gets out of it and steps on the ground. There is surprise on his face. Closing his eyes, the spirit also came out of the portal. She exclaims contentedly that they finally got out. The guy looks back at the calmly flying spirit. He asks if they will go now. She happily agrees. A table appears in front of the main character, which congratulates him on completing the training tower. The information on it says that Woo Jin has become an official hunter, and the ban on the status window has been lifted. The table says that the guy can check the relevant information. He cleared the 3rd floor of the training tower and received the achievement Cleaner of the Training Tower. As a reward, Woo Jin receives inventory and, as an official hunter, he can complete daily quests. The table also says that if you complete daily quests for a week, you will unlock the main quest, the secret cooking records of the dungeon. Woo Jin, standing against the background of the yellow sky, stands and calmly looks forward, and next to him some small yellow creature hangs in the air. He turns around, glaring at the creature. The guy's hand slams right into him. The main character holds a creature in his hand, and behind the guy's back rises a gray dragon with red eyes. Woo Jin's gaze becomes stern. He wonders what it is. The spirit looks at the guy in alarm, clenching his fists. She tells Woo Jin to calm down. The young man turns his head, seeing a table next to him, which asks if he will check the guide on using the status window and inventory. Squeezing the creature in his hand, the main character looks displeased at the table. He wonders what will happen if he refuses. Above this table another one appears, on which it is written that this is an introductory guide. Woo Jin closes his eyes and exhales, unclenching his hand with the yellow creature and agreeing with the proposal. The creature rushes into his chest, and the young man looks at it in surprise. He thinks about it entering his body, and it's interesting. Behind the surprised Woo Jin is a yellow light resembling a flame. The guy understands that both the status window and inventory can be opened mentally, and he can check his status and manage items. Information about the daily quest appears on the table in front of the main character. It says that the quests to cook food from the dungeon once and treat someone with your food once are not completed. Woo Jin rests his hands on his hips and looks contentedly at the table. Joy is also visible on the spirit's face. The guy notes that the quest is easier than he thought. The girl explains that the reason is that this is a daily quest. The main character remembers his brother with his tongue hanging out and showing class. He thinks about what he cooks every day, but it will be difficult to feed someone, so if there is no one, he will have to feed Sun Ho. Woo Jin and the spirit look to the side in surprise when they hear a voice calling the guy and asking why he didn't tell him and went without equipment. Sun Ho approaches them, scratching the back of his head and looking at his brother with displeasure. He reveals that he was waiting for Woo Jin. He looks at him questioningly, and the spirit hides behind his head, looking displeasedly at Sun Ho. The main character is interested in what his brother is doing here. He asks again in amazement. Smiling widely, he places his hands on Woo Jin's shoulders, who looks at his brother, eyes wide and cowering. Sun Ho exclaims that he came to meet his brother and assumes that he has cleared the 3rd floor. The guy boldly looks at the main character and grins. He reveals that he will speak directly and Woo Jin should join the Heavenly Wing. The main character walks down the street. He looks up in surprise, as does the spirit. The girl reports that they have arrived. The spirit looks ahead with raised eyebrows. She's going to say something about this place. In front of the guys they can see a gray building with an emblem, and many people are walking around. The spirit reports that this is a military academy for hunters. Woo Jin calmly looks at the building, understanding what kind of academy it is. After leaving the tower, during a conversation with Sun Ho, he exclaims with displeasure that, it turns out, his brother will not come to the Sky Wing, and is interested in why he is doing this. The main character calmly replies that he could barely cope with the first floor and he still lacks experience. He walks up the stairs, followed behind by Sun Ho, who asks if his brother really thinks he will believe this. The guy suggests imagining that Woo Jin really only visited the first floor. Sun Ho smiles contentedly, and the main character looks ahead exhausted. His brother declares that he will personally recommend him to the guild, and Woo Jin will only have to prove his skills. Sun Ho thinks it's cool that they'll end up in the same guild. He again only dryly refuses. Sun Ho grits his teeth and shakes with rage. The guy looks at his brother angrily, bending his fingers. He shouts that if he joins, he will select a dungeon for his skills and they will divide the reward, and even find good equipment. Woo Jin indifferently replies that he doesn't want to. Enraged, Sun Ho resignedly covers his eyes with his hand and throws back his head. The main character smiles benevolently, saying that he became a hunter in order to achieve heights in cooking. The upset brother says he thought he went to the tower because he was done cooking. Woo Jin walks forward with a satisfied face, and his disgruntled brother stands behind him. The main character says that he would never do that. Sun Ho covers his face with his hand, and his brother stops and looks forward in amazement. The hunter reveals that he will regret it sooner or later if he continues. He is interested in why this will happen. The Hunter Military Academy stands against a red sky and lights are on in some of the windows. Sun Ho explains that if, after clearing the tower, one does not join the guild within 1 week, then the person is taken to the Military Academy of Hunters. Woo Jin looks at his brother in confusion and asks again. He furiously exclaims that he is surprised that he did not know this. 3 dissatisfied men stand on a red background with an emblem. Sun Ho explains that the Military Academy for Hunters is controlled by the state, but this is only in words, because in reality it is a complete mess. Among the bright fire, a dog sits on a chair and reads a book. The guy tells his brother that because of the prejudice that only worms go there, they are trained using the old methods. With his arms folded across his chest, Sun Ho looks forward with contempt and notes that the dungeons at the academy are chosen at random, which is much worse than one might think. A smile appears on Woo Jin's face. He assumes that you can go into any dungeon. Smirking, the guy looks back at his brother, saying that he understands and will think about it. Woo Jin apologizes, explaining that he wants to rest. Sun Ho scratches the back of his head, looking at the young man with displeasure. He says he understands that he is tired. Woo Jin walks further past the shops. His brother stands behind him and shouts after him that he shouldn't delay this issue, because otherwise he will be taken away. He replies that he understands and will decide before that moment. Woo Jin stares at his phone screen in surprise, thinking that it will be taken away within a week. A message from the Military Academy for Hunters is open on the phone, which states that this is an announcement for those who passed the training tower in the second half of 2031, who are not members of the guild. The Academy says they need to register there by 9 o'clock on the 4th of April, and for detailed information they need to go to the website. The message says that if they refuse, they will lose their rights to enter the dungeon and their hunter certificate. After reading the message, Woo Jin decides he needs to think about it. The guy remembers the food and how he turned the ingredients in the pan, as well as how he stood in front of the tables. He realizes that there was nothing in the tower except slimes, and there are many more ingredients outside. The young man thinks that thanks to this, he will be able to come up with a new recipe and rise 2 levels. Woo Jin stands in front of the daily quest table. The young man realizes that he was never able to treat anyone with his food. He remembers Sun Ho sticking his tongue out at him and making other gestures, refusing to try his food. The spirit looks upset at the main character, asking him if he will stop cooking. He notices something and looks down questioningly. He replies that, of course, he will not stop, because this is why he became a hunter. Woo Jin reveals that he never thought of quitting cooking after joining the academy. The young man looks at his phone, where he receives a call from Sun Ho. The main character assumes that his brother found out that he was going to join the academy. Woo Jin looks at the phone screen with displeasure and tells the spirit to go. They enter the gym of the main building of the Military Academy for Hunters, where a huge number of people are crowding. The spirit looks ahead in surprise and puts a finger to its chin. She suggests that the atmosphere is a little special. The guy with brown hair is boiling with joy. Another guy, in a green hoodie, holds his head with his hand and looks ahead in fear. Woo Jin looks away, as does the spirit. The girl notes that there are a lot of people here. The main character raises his head, looking around the room. He reflects that for a place that was previously just rubble, the hallways and gym have been renovated well. The students start looking at each other excitedly, and Woo Jin notices this, looking somewhere in surprise. Seol Ha stands against the wall in her suit. One of the students suggests that she join the Sky Wing. The girl stands, silently looking down. Woo Jin looks to the side, noticing Sung Joon. He stands busily, folding his arms on his chest and looking to the side, pursing his lips. The main character did not expect to meet him here. A man in black shoes walks on the floor, smiling. The spirit approaches Woo Jin, telling the guy to look at the man whose head is smooth like a griffin's egg. The main character turns his head, looking forward questioningly, and the spirit nearby laughs, pointing his finger at the man. A voice is heard announcing that they will begin the entrance ceremony, and the floor is given to the director of the military academy. A large bald man approaches the microphone. He exclaims that he is the director of a military academy for hunters. Sung Joon looks dumbfounded at the man who says his name is Jong Kai. With his mouth slightly open, Seol Ha listens to the director, who reports that the status of the military academy is deteriorating every day. Woo Jin lifts her head with a slight smile, noting the man's manner of speech and aura. There is surprise in his eyes. The director exclaims that they cannot leave things to chance. The main character remembers a strong man who is strangling a man with one hand. Woo Jin realizes that this is his most loyal supporter, one of the 3 demons of the Heavenly Demon Sect. The man's mouth is wide open and he shouts that there are many reasons for this, the main one being their attitude. The main character looks forward in surprise, realizing that he is also here. He looks at the director and sees a similar man, but in different clothes and with a scar on his face. The young man realizes that this is the blood demon, Kion. Woo Jin looks at him, smiling, and is glad that they met and will root for him. Sung Joon stands behind him, covering his mouth with his hand. The guy thinks that this is strange. He looks at the director, clenching his fist, realizing that no matter how much he thinks, he cannot remember Jong Kai. A man stands on the ground with a naked torso and smiles, and the corpses of monsters lie around. He single-handedly killed B-rank monsters and was also present at the A-rank gate incident. On the website, the Hunter Daily newspaper, there is a photo of the man and his description. The guy understands that if you search the Hunters forum, you can find all the information. Jong Kai stands on the podium and points his finger up. Sung Joon wonders why, with such skills, he runs some kind of military academy. He looks forward defiantly, thinking that in the past he was not the director of the military academy. Sung Joon decides that he couldn't help but know such a celebrity. Sung Joon in the future sits in armor on a stone surface. The guy understands that he needs to find out what has changed since his return, and the military academy is the ideal place for this. Sung Joon stands among the crowd of other students and looks ahead determinedly, deciding that this is just the beginning. There is seriousness on his face. The guy is thinking that he needs to find out everything as soon as possible. A hand clenched into a fist crashes into a human-shaped pear. The voice says to attack with all your might. A tired-looking teacher in a white shirt and black hair tied into a ponytail touches his wrist with one hand with the other. This is the head teacher of the military academy for hunters, Min Sun, who explains that after the blow the guy's scores will appear. He stands near a pear and a table that shows the number 30,766. Min Sung explains that this simple test is needed to identify the guy's skills, and after that the distribution will take place. A guy with gray hair and a gray sweater covers his mouth with his hand and looks at another guy with black hair. The head teacher reports that those who use weapons can take training items on the left. He asks if there are any questions. Someone raises their hand in apology. She is a girl with light brown hair and wearing a yellow hoodie. She asks in surprise whether one blow is not enough. Min Sung calmly looks at her and replies that this number was invented in order to understand how many blows their strength would be enough for. Another question is heard about whether the head teacher's result is cool. Min Sung is silent for a while, looking at the student with tired eyes. The pyramid has 6 tiers, ranging from F rank to S rank, with B rank being the third from the top. Min Sung says that he is a B rank hunter, and that will make it clearer. The head teacher puts his hand on the pear and looks at the students, offering to start if there are no more questions. He tells them to go out one by one. A girl with long red hair makes a shot for 302 points. A guy with black hair and a white jacket hits a pear and gets 272 points. The next guy makes a 404 putt. Woo Jin looks at the guy leaving, scratching the back of his head. The main character roughly understands the average score, and he is sorry that only a few showed new skills. The spirit folds its hands in front of its chest and looks to the side in surprise. She realizes that Sung Jun is here too. He calmly begins to walk towards the pair as his name was called. Woo Jin watches him, thinking that last time he was not able to show his full strength because he was distracted by him. Sung Jun swings his arms, wanting to strike. The main character decides to see how much he will show now, and assumes that it will be somewhere around 19,000 points. Sung Jun lands a strong blow. The scoreboard shows 3,097 points. Someone notes this in surprise. Woo Jin calmly looks at this, realizing that the guy used a spear in the tower, which means he's hiding his power here. All the students look dumbfounded at the number that appears. The main character thinks that Sung Jun's score is higher than others, but he probably has a reason to hide his strength. A guy with black hair and a red sweater elbows his friend with gray hair and says that now it's her turn. A voice is heard saying that Seol Ha is coming next. She takes the weapon in her hand. The girl begins to unfasten her trowel. The students are wondering how much Seol Ha will get. Unfastening her trowel, she grins and looks forward. The girl picks up the stick and begins to glow with a blue flame. She swings and punches with all her might, looking seriously at the bag. The students look at Seol Ha in shock. Sung Jun also turns around in surprise. Points are collected on the table. As a result, the number 10,793 appears there. With her hand on her side, Seol Ha calmly looks at her result, while the others shout this number in amazement. The girl passes by the students, hearing surprised negotiations that she has 10,000 points, and this is impossible. The two guys look at each other. One suggests that the girl has an artifact, and the second replies that this is impossible. Behind them, Woo Jin stands near the punching bag and throws a punch. The scoreboard shows the number 222. The main character decides that this is great. He smiles, looking at the result, and thinks that this way he will not attract too much attention. After the test, Sung Jun and Seol Ha's scores became a new topic of discussion, and after that, the rules and schedule were announced to them. The bright tree can be seen against the blue sky. There is a gray building among the vegetation, and beautiful sakura can be seen nearby. This building is a military academy dormitory for hunters. Woo Jin stirs something in a bowl. He understands that life in the hostel is not bad. The guy picks up a spatula with blue liquid on it and looks at it with satisfaction. The main character thinks that there is a certain freedom here that is different from home. Woo Jin notes that this blue slime salad dressing is not bad. The young man understands that his brother did his best to prevent him from entering here. He remembers Sung Jun shouting at his brother, who was sitting with his back to him. He stated that Woo Jin would be exploited if he entered there. The main character wonders if his brother really thought that he would join the guild. Woo Jin takes some of his dish on his finger and puts it in his mouth. The guy happily realizes that here he can cook anything he wants, and can even treat others. After trying it, he says that, as he thought, it's delicious. There are several books on the shelf. The main character notes that they teach the base here, so he learned a lot about the monsters that appear in dungeons. On Woo Jin's desktop there is a computer, a lamp, an office, and textbooks. He understands that not everyone liked it, and many said that it could be found on the internet in 5 minutes, so few teachers listen. Standing near the sink, the young man turns his head to the side. He looks at the time seriously, realizing that he cannot be late today. The gym of the main building of the military academy for hunters is crowded with many students. The guys look forward in surprise, hearing a voice that greets the cadets. The head teacher looks at the tablet, about to say what they will receive today. Min Sung raises his head and looks at the students, informing them that today they will receive their first official assignment. And now he announces the team for the expedition to the dungeon. Everyone looks at the head teacher in alarm, without speaking. He explains that the cadets he names and the hunter observer will be on the same team. Sung Jun looks ahead from under his brows, hearing that they will be exploring a low-rank dungeon. Seol Ha looks forward calmly. The head teacher reports that they are starting. A surprised spirit sits on Woo Jin's shoulder. She exclaims that exploring the dungeon is very interesting. He calmly agrees with the girl. After this, the cadets were named in order. The head teacher stands with his back to the students and calls the next team, which consists of Si-yeon and Il-ho. The guys stand, listening carefully to Min Sung's words, and he calls out names. Looking at the tablet, Min Sung names the next team, the members of which are Chong Li and Jai Yi, and the observer is Youngdu. The head teacher says that he will now announce the last team. The main character looks forward in surprise, and a spirit sleeps on his head. Min Sung calls Woo Jin and Seol Ha. The girl also looks ahead in amazement. The guy looks back at her, thinking. She looks at him silently. All the students open their mouths in surprise as Min-sung reveals that the observer for this team will be Hunter Kai-guk. The guys exclaim that this is the same Kai-guk, a popular hunter from the Chu clan. Woo-jin looks at the guys indifferently, and the spirit hangs near him, noting that this guy is famous. The head teacher announces that the distribution is completed. He looks at the tablet, clicking something there, and says that after the observer introduces himself, the guys can get together in a group and discuss. The man says that many of them are already students at the academy, but there are also new arrivals. Students look at the doors opening. Min-sung explains that their main task is to return safely from the dungeon under the guidance of the observer. The man reports that all the hunters have arrived, and now they should split into groups. Silhouettes of people can be seen approaching the gym. A man in a suit, glasses, and gray hair enters, smiling and waving to the guys. The students exclaim that it really is Kai-guk and realize that it seems like the military academy actually hired him. He approaches Woo-jin, who is looking at the man in surprise, and Seol-ha, who smiles shyly and holds one hand on the other's forearm. Kai-guk smiles sweetly and greets the guys, offering to skip the formalities if they don't mind. The man thinks about Seol-ha. She agrees with his proposal. Kai-guk thinks that this is a great chance to make Skywing his debtor. The spirit sits on the head of Woo-jin, who looks askance at the girl, and the hunter standing in front of them explains that he previously refused the position of leader, but this time he agreed because of Seol-ha. He suggests that it would be beneficial for her to learn from a rank B hunter since Skywing and the Chu clan are related. Seol-ha's gaze becomes contemptuous and indifferent. She looks at Kai-guk with displeasure and states that she is not here as the daughter of Du Chang, the head of the Heavenly Wing, but as a cadet at the academy. He smiles widely and awkwardly scratches the back of his head, laughing and promising to be more attentive. The spirit looks at the hunter with displeasure, folding his hands in front of his chest. She notes that this man is openly ignoring Woo-jin. He doesn't answer. Kai-guk suggests they start choosing a dungeon. He exclaims joyfully that he liked something from the list. A man shows something on his phone to the surprised guys. Stunned, Seol-ha asks him if they will go there, and the spirit looks at her questioningly. Kai-guk confirms this. His gaze becomes more serious, and the man declares that they will go to the dungeon of killer bees. In the city there is a structure that looks like a subway entrance that glows blue. This is the southern station, the dungeon of killer bees. Beautiful sakura trees grow along the path, and a river flows nearby. Entering the portal offers an incredible view of the park for walking, and although it is an F-rank dungeon, many hunters avoid it. The insect flaps its wings and flies forward. A large furry bee flies in the air. The reason is the killer bees, which are hardly F-rank monsters. Seol-ha puts a finger to her mouth and looks down worriedly, wondering if it will be too dangerous for Woo-jin. The girl looks at him, thinking that his test scores were not very high. Seol-ha approaches the main character with a friendly look and calls him. The guy looks back at her. The girl's expression becomes lively and surprised. She reports that this dungeon is quite dangerous, so it's worth telling Hunter Kai-guk something. Seol-ha doesn't even have time to finish her sentence when she hears an enthusiastic scream. An observer appears behind the girl. He states that he is a B-rank hunter, so there shouldn't be any problems. The man thinks about the guy's name. He comes up to him, hugging him by the shoulder. Woo-jin says his name and Kai-guk agrees, supposedly remembering. The observer says that since the guy went through the training tower, it means he is capable of something. He looks ahead indifferently, and Kai-guk assumes that he can protect himself. Many silhouettes with red eyes look at the goblin with a shield and a knife. Kai-guk explains that many guilds now send their newbies to low-level dungeons, so it will be difficult to practice properly. The man smiles and puts out his index finger. He understands that other dungeons are too easy, and there he will not be able to show his strength. Kai-guk voices his hope that the guys will be able to learn a lot from this task. The man looks at the calm guys and explains that the boss monster will not be higher than rank C, so there should be no problems. Kai-guk stands outside the south station with his hands in his pockets. He states that it has already been confirmed that there is no boss here, so Seol-ha needn't worry. The man folds his hand, beckoning the guys. Kai-guk offers to come in if there are no more objections. Seol-ha looks away worriedly, and Woo-jin stands calmly, unlike the spirit, who is burning with anger. Inside the killer bee dungeon, insects fly quickly past the trees. Kai-guk says that he will first tell the guys about the insect monsters. A man stands with his weapon slung over his shoulder, while many bees are heading towards him. He says that they all have one weak point, and assumes that the guys already know about it. Kai-guk looks at his enemies indifferently. With his weapon he kills one bee. The hunter reports that the weak point is the main individual in the group. The bees fall exhausted, and Kaiguk explains that if you kill the main one, the rest will become powerless. Seol-ha fights by cutting bees. She understands that the observer found the main specimen the first time. He exclaims that the girl is great and has excellent skills. The spear pierces the bee and blood oozes out. Kaiguk says that the main individual's mana is different from the others, and at first it will be difficult for them, but then it will become easier. The man says that for this reason he will tell about another method. He points his index finger up, looking at Seol-ha, who is surprised, and Woo-jin sits near the tree, with his back to them. He realizes that there are more ingredients here than in the learning tower. The guy looks at a beautiful turquoise plant, mint penestra. The main character thinks that the ingredients from the recipes can only be found in the dungeon, so he needs to collect more. Kaiguk looks at Seol-ha enticingly, telling her that she can ask the Chu clan to train her individually. The girl and the observer look at Woo-jin in surprise, wondering what he's even doing there. Scrunching his face, Kaiguk scratches the back of his head and asks the guy to stop collecting grass and go. The man doesn't understand why people from the academy are so worthless. Seol-ha looks at Woo-jin in surprise. She understands that the young man strictly follows the instructions. The girl looks at the clearing where dead bees lie and trees grow. Seol-ha thinks that these instructions are written in the Dungeon Exploration Notes book, because it says that when entering, you need to explore the area first. Kaiguk holds his weapon slung over his shoulder and yells at Woo-jin to stop messing around, because this area has already been explored and there is nothing here. The spirit flies towards the man with an angry look, raising his fist. She asks in confusion how this man dares to interfere with Woo-jin's gathering of ingredients. Frowning his brows, he turns around and starts walking, telling Seol-ha to leave too. The main character looks ahead in surprise. The table shows a jar of honey and says that killer bee honey is made from tree sap by killer bees. When applied to the skin it increases mana, and is not recommended for consumption. This honey is included in recipes such as King Killer Bee Jam, Killer Bee Giblets, Killer Bee Hive Jam, and Killer Bee Tincture. Woo-jin focuses on Killer Bee Jam for 30 points. He wonders where he can find their hive. The guy looks at the observer and Seol-ha. The main character understands that they have been here for a long time, but he has not yet seen the hive. Woo-jin thinks that although killer bees are huge, their movements are no different from ordinary bees. Seol-ha swings her sword and looks at her enemies with determination. Kaiguk is also fighting, blue flashes flying around him. The man tells Seol-ha not to overdo it. Woo-jin looks around carefully, trying to figure out where their hive is, and decides that he needs to look. The main character is dissatisfied that he will not be able to properly collect the ingredients with Seol-ha and the observer. He stands in front of the bushes, thinking that the guys will cope without him. There are dead killer bees on the ground. Seol-ha exhales and realizes that she killed 15 individuals and didn't even have time to rest. Holding a sword in her hand, she looks intensely at the bee. The girl realizes that although they weaken after the death of the main individual, they still stay in the group, so it is difficult to fight with them. Kaiguk grins as he cleans his weapon. Seol-ha thinks that it would be dangerous here without a watcher. The girl looks at the ground in surprise, realizing that it is more dangerous here than she thought. Seol-ha turns around because she's wondering how Woo-jin is doing. However, the girl does not see him in the place where he was sitting before. The girl smiles nervously, not understanding what happened. Kaiguk puts the weapon around his neck and holds it with his hands, smiling. He is about to say something, but Seol-ha interrupts him. The man asks her what she wanted to say. Kaiguk looks at the girl in confusion as she reports that Woo-jin is not there. The observer's expression becomes serious and he asks again. He frowns and looks around, and Seol-ha fearfully covers her mouth with her hand. Kaiguk loudly calls the main character. The man straightens his tie, and veins stand out on his face and neck with anger. He angrily exclaims that this scoundrel is annoying him and collects herbs instead of hunting. A loud sound echoes, causing Seol-ha and Kaiguk to cover their ears with their hands. The man wonders what this hum is. He clenches his teeth with tension, realizing that ordinary bees cannot make such a sound. Seol-ha closes her eyes and presses her hands on her ears. Suddenly, a red table appears above them. The guys look at it with confusion, not knowing what it is. Information appears on the table that the queen of killer bees has appeared, because they angered her with their invasion of the territory. They are surprised by the fact of her appearance. The bees quickly fly forward. Woo-jin easily cuts them, glad that he got out of there, because with them he wouldn't have been able to collect all the necessary ingredients. After killing the bees, the guy stops and looks into the distance, thinking that the sweet smell is coming from there, and that means there is definitely something valuable there. Woo-jin closes his eyes and concentrates on the smell, deciding that he needs to go there. The young man walks forward, and the spirit looks at him in surprise and bewilderedly asks him to wait for her. The main character removes the branches of a bush with his hand. He stands in front of a huge cave. The spirit exclaims in amazement that this is a cave and asks how they could not have noticed it. The guy assumes that the reason is that she is located in the very depths of the dungeon. He goes inside and moves forward. Woo Jin realizes that if it weren't for his sense of smell, he wouldn't have found the cave, and many people probably pass by. The guy looks forward decisively, thinking that he is in anticipation. He walks past yellow-tinged stone walls, wanting to find the source of the sweet smell. The spirit covers its mouth with its hand and looks somewhere, eyes wide open. She admires and calls the cook. They see yellow honeycomb hanging from the top. The spirit exclaims that this hive is very large, and this is a real honey paradise. She looks at it in fascination, and Woo Jin reaches out to the honeycomb. He realizes that the hive is very clean and says he wonders what it tastes like. A red table appears above the guy. He turns around in surprise, not understanding what is happening. It says that the queen killer bee has appeared because he angered her by invading her territory. The young man carefully steps aside, hearing something. He suggests that the sound comes from outside the cave. Tae-guk runs forward, followed by Seol-ha. The man understands that no one knew that this would happen. Beads of sweat appear on his face. The observer thinks that if he had known, he would have taken a tracking device with him. There is fear in Tae-guk's eyes, because he realizes that if they find out that he has lost a cadet, then all his efforts to get a calling in the Chu clan will go down the drain. Seol-ha looks at the angry man, suggesting that they split up because it will be faster. He asks not to talk nonsense, and to remember what she studied at the academy. The man cuts the bee, exclaiming that if he loses Seol-ha too, then there will be trouble. The girl turns around in surprise at the two parts of the bee flying back. Tae-guk glares at her furiously, reminding her that separation at such moments is dangerous. Seol-ha wants to say that she understands, but she doesn't finish the word. The observer stops her with a hand gesture, standing behind a tree. He shouts to the girl to stop and hide. The girl sits down behind a tree with displeasure. Concern appears on her face and she asks what it is. Tae-guk just tells her to be quiet. In the sky you can see a big scary bee, which doesn't look like those the guys killed before. This is a C-rank boss, the queen killer bee, who looks quite scary. The observer presses himself against the tree from tension, not understanding what a boss of such a level forgot in a rank F dungeon, and whether there was a boss here at all. He looks at the queen flying above the trees. Tae-guk thinks that the cadets will not be able to cope with him, because to defeat the queen, you need 3 B-rank hunters. The observer looks ahead angrily. He realizes that when the boss appears, the dungeon limits entry and exit for 6 hours, so there is no point in waiting for help, and if they don't hold out, they will die. Tae-guk turns to Seol-ha, pointing his finger back. He decides to calm down first, and if he solves this problem, Skywing will thank him. The man tells the girl to concentrate, because this is an ordinary killer bee, only bigger. The observer explains that she did not notice them, so she needs to quietly move back. Seol-ha looks somewhere scared, disagreeing with Tae-guk, adding that the queen noticed them. He looks at the girl anxiously, asking again. He replays her words in his head. The queen killer bee flies directly over the tree where the observer is standing. The man looks up, noticing the insect and cursing. The queen killer bee swoops down. Tae-guk angrily yells at Seol-ha to step back. A huge shadow from a bee falls on them. The girl agrees. The observer quickly turns his head and exclaims that her size will make it difficult for her to move between the trees, so she should use this advantage to break away from her. The man looks up to see the queen killer bee flying straight at him. Tae-guk says he will buy time for Seol-ha. He runs past the insect. Leaves are flying down past the man. The observer realizes that the queen has destroyed all the trees. Tae-guk holds a weapon in his hand and bends down a little as a bee flies towards him. He realizes that the queen is stronger than he thought. The speed of the bee's flight cuts the air. The observer anxiously thrusts his weapon forward, emitting a blue light and using a lead spear. This is his first appointment. Tae-guk jumps up and hits the bee with his spear, which emits blue rays. The man looks at the queen in confusion, realizing that he hit her with all his might and she didn't even blink an eye. And this is incredible. He yells at Seol-ha to run. She looks at the observer in confusion, asking again. The man shouts that she really needs to run away. The girl purses her lips and looks forward displeasedly. Tae-guk turns around and angrily reminds her that he told her to run. Seol-ha holds her sword out in front of her, emphatically conveying that her father said never to leave an enemy behind, so she will fight too. Tae-guk frowns and shouts displeasedly that this is a C-rank boss, and she doesn't seem to understand at all what situation they're in, and they can't win together. A scream is heard, signaling that the queen is attacking. The bee flies straight towards Kai-guk. He falls, and the bee flies to Seol-ha. The observer turns to the girl in fear, thinking about her. Seol-ha jumps up, swinging her sword, green fire emanating from her. The girl jumps away from the queen. She lands, leaving a trail of dust behind her. Seol-ha looks ahead with determination, saying that she can defend herself. The girl understands that if not for the crack, the attack would have passed, and the bee is truly amazing. The observer looks at Seol-ha in surprise, noting that she is good, so he will give her a task. Kai-kuk tells the girl to distract the bee while he delivers the decisive blow with the second spear technique. He explains that if they drag out the fight, they won't win, so they need to strike now, while they still have the strength. Kai-kuk says that he will try to break the queen's shell and cut her internal organs. The man frowns and his gaze becomes serious. He decides to use all his mana for this. Kai-guk holds his spear horizontally, emitting a blue light, while Seol-ha runs in front. The man says that they only have one chance, and the girl exclaims that she understands. Seol-ha swings her weapon to stab the queen. Having done this, the girl lands with one leg extended. Queen Killer Bee turns her head towards Seol-ha. She makes a loud sound again. The girl looks seriously at the insect, noting that the sound is different from that time. More bees are approaching the guys. The girl understands that the queen has called other killer bees, and she needs to stall for time so that the observer has time to prepare. The bees quickly fly around an irritated Seol-ha who tries to confront them. The girl exclaims that this infuriates her. She notices something and lets out a short scream. The girl's gaze becomes frightened, and she realizes that it is already late. Kai-guk puts out his spear and creates intertwining beams around himself that rush towards the bee. He uses a lead spiral spear. The queen killer bee flies back. Seol-ha falls to the ground and looks at the bee in surprise, assuming that the observer killed it. He smiles and closes his eyes. He explains that even though this is a C-rank boss, he put all his strength into this blow. Kai-guk tells her that she shouldn't survive and praises Seol-ha. The girl calmly looks at the observer, and behind her a huge silhouette of a bee can be seen. Seol-ha says that in that case, we need to find Woo-jin quickly. Kai-kuk looks back at the girl in fear, noticing the silhouette. Seol-ha's expression becomes tired and scared. She asks about what happened. The bee strikes and the girl is thrown back. The girl screams in pain, and the observer calls her. There is fear in his eyes. A large bee towers in front of Kai-guk. He does not move and looks at the insect, thinking about what to do, because in this situation he is powerless. His pupils look up at the huge bee. The observer realizes that he has no strength left to continue the fight. Kai-kuk doesn't want to believe that he will just die here. The man looks at Seol-ha lying on the ground. He blames Woo-jin for everything, because he believes that if it weren't for him, they would have hidden and waited out this time. The observer notices something. He decides that at least Seol-ha needs to be saved. Kai-kuk sees that the bee is not looking at him, but somewhere else. The man wonders what she is looking at. He notices Woo-jin walking forward calmly. There is slight surprise on his face. Kai-kuk yells at him, saying he's a worm and asking where the guy has been all this time. The observer tells the main character to run away, because this monster is the boss of the dungeon. Woo-jin doesn't react and stands still in front of the queen killer bees. Kai-kuk yells at him not to stand, but to run. A man thinks about his body. The protagonist reaches for his weapon after hearing the observer declare that he will die. Holding a weapon in his hand, the young man approaches the bee. Kai-kuk looks at this in horror. With one blow he cuts the queen in half. Now, next to Woo-jin lies a dead bee. The observer looks at this in fear. The main character returns his sword to its case. Kai-kuk sits on the floor, pushing his head forward in surprise. He wonders what it was just now. The man understands that he chose this weakling in order to seem better in comparison with him. Kai-guk looks at Woo-jin, who is sitting near the corpse of a bee. He thinks that the insect was probably already dead. The man sees one half of it and decides that it was not so, because despite the wound, the bee had enough strength to finish him off. Joyful Woo-jin squats and looks at the tables. Kai-kuk realizes that the guy killed the queen very easily. The man remembers the moments when he told Woo-jin not to do this. He scratches his head, walks towards the main character and calls him. The man quickly steps aside and falls. He fearfully asks how Woo-jin did this. He doesn't answer and leaves. Kai-kuk thinks about where the guy went. He turns around sharply, remembering Seol-ha. The observer leans over her body, bringing his hand, which emits blue light, to his face. Kai-guk understands that the girl is unconscious, but will live. He notes that mana is restored well, which is great. The man sees a joyful Woo-jin holding a plate of honey in his hand. He realizes that this is a hive of bees, and it seems that the guy has been following him. Cooking utensils appear in the air in front of the young man. Kai-kook realizes that this is inventory. The man looks questioningly at the cadet, wondering where he got his equipment from. The observer understands that they couldn't give it to him, because if Wu Jin had such acquaintances, he would have known him. The main character lifts the lid. Kai-kook assumes that the guy cleared the 3rd floor of the tower because he sees no other explanation. The man is trying to understand why the guy did not join the guild, but went to the academy. He covers his nose from the unbearable smell. Kai-kook sees the pan standing on the stove. He thinks about what this fool is doing, realizing that it really stinks. The observer stands behind a pleased Wu Jin, covering his nose and asking what the cadet is doing. He sees a turquoise dish on the plate that resembles a cake. The man looks at it fearfully and questioningly, not understanding what the young man did. Kai-kook looks away nervously, wondering if he cooked it or just combined the byproducts. He assumes that this is a potion for driving away monsters, because the smell is similar to that. At the top of the dish you can see small porcini mushrooms. The man does not understand why mushrooms grow on the hive if it belonged to killer bees. The observer assumes that there is a weed around the dish. Kai-kook rubs his chin, looking ahead seriously. His head is filled with speculation that it is poison for killer bees, but the queen is already dead, so it is useless. Looking kindly at the observer, Wu Jin hands him a plate of this food and asks him to eat. Kai-kook looks at the dish in horror and asks again. His face takes on an alarmed look, mentally asking the guy if he is offering to eat this for him and if it is even edible. Kai-kook turns his head to the side, raising one eyebrow. He assumes that the cadet was offended by his words, because it is impossible to eat. A man looks at a dead bee. He takes the dish and opens his mouth to eat it. Kai-kook decides that it is better to sacrifice his stomach than to be killed, and he is unlikely to die from it. Tears come to the man's eyes and he spits out the food, assuming that he will still die from this dish. Tears stream down his face, and Kai-kook covers his mouth with his hand. He realizes that this dish has a terrible texture, like maggots crawling in his mouth, viscous honey and soft mushrooms. The man presses his finger on his throat, and Wu Jin stands behind him and looks at the observer in surprise. Kai-kook doesn't understand why it tastes so bitter if the cadet made it from a beehive. He wonders where all the sweets went and what the guy put there. The man sits on his knees and wipes tears from his eyes, suggesting that it was revenge. The joyful young man smiles and looks at Kai-kook, asking how he is. He thinks that the guy is a psycho. Through the observer's glasses one can see eyes in which tears are gathering. He doesn't say anything for a while, then bows and sadly replies that it was delicious. A table appears above the crying Kai-kook. He raises his head and wonders what it is. The man is amazed to read the information on the table, which says that he ate the neutralized poison of the queen killer bees, thereby absorbing her energy, and his resistance to poisons increased. Kai-kook is very surprised by this. Raising his eyebrows and opening his mouth, he looks at the table. The man realizes that eating it seems to increase resistance to poisons, and it was prepared from the monster's side item. Kai-kook turns his head to look at Wu Jin. The man wonders who this guy is. He stands, thoughtfully looking at the table. He notes that kimchi soup is unexpected. The guy decides that he understands how to cook. You receive notifications that you have received achievements of amazing quality and a unique recipe. On the table there is a picture of a snack from the Royal Hive. The author is Wu Jin, rank E++. With the quality being at level A, there is also information that this unique dish with incredible taste was prepared by the dungeon chef, Wu Jin, and thanks to the unmistakable by cooking, the queen's poison was neutralized. Wu Jin realizes that he was able to achieve incredible taste. Notifications are received that the achievement of high rarity has been obtained. The reward will be paid in accordance with the result, and he also gains experience. The main character scratches his chin and remembers the yellow part of a bee with veins, from which a sharp black sting sticks out. Wu Jin notes that he was not mistaken with the queen's sting, because it diluted the sweetness of the hive. The spirit cups her cheeks with her hands in admiration, and her eyes light up with admiration. She exclaims that there are at least 5 different flavors. The girl states that Wu Jin prepared an incredible dish. He closes his eyes, lowering his head, and the spirit looks at him in admiration. The young man understands that the daily quest is over, so he can move on and collect the ingredients. Xiao Ha sits up, groaning. Rising, she closes her eyes and touches her head. The girl looks down wearily, remembering that she lost consciousness due to the queen's attack. Xiao Ha notices the bee's corpse, split in half, and realizes that it is dead. She looks at the dead bee, thinking that the observer who killed it is incredible. A crying Kaiguk, with food behind his decks, turns around, coughs and exclaims that she has come to her senses. Seol-ha calls him. A man holds a plate with 2 such snacks in his hands. He realizes that his resistance to poison has increased because of this, and it seems that everything is fine with the girl. But it is better to give it to her too. Kaiguk hands the snack to a tired Seol-ha, telling her that Woo Jin made it and she should eat the dish. The girl calmly thanks him. She brings the snack to her open mouth. Pursing his lips, Kaiguk looks at her nervously. Woo Jin's facial expression reads attentiveness and calm. The girl puts a snack in her mouth. Smiling evilly, the observer approaches the girl, asking how she is doing. She covers her mouth with her hand, about to say something. Seol-ha happily looks forward and exclaims that it is very tasty, and this is her first time trying something like this. With his hands folded in front of his chest, the main character looks at her with satisfaction. And Kaiguk is simply dumbfounded. He asks the girl to repeat what she said. A little girl with blue hair tightly grips a container with a drink and drinks from a straw. The blue-haired man, the head of the Skywing Guild, Du Chang, looks at her lovingly. He asks if Seol-ha likes him, noting that his friend went to great lengths to find it in the dungeon. Du Chang reports that a friend said that this medicine tastes so sweet that it makes your tongue tingle. The girl holds a container with purple liquid and looks shyly to the side. Seol-ha admits that she doesn't feel it. The man looks at the girl very upset, and horror is visible in his eyes. With his head down, Seol-ha apologizes to Dad. He stands in front of her on one knee and looks at his daughter with regret. Seol-ha repeats that she doesn't feel anything. Du Chang bites his lip and tenses his facial muscles as he calls out his daughter's name. The girl tries to remain calm, although the frustration is visible in her eyes. She says everything is fine. Seol-ha says that she may not be able to taste, but she has heightened other senses. Seol-ha, standing in front of Woo Jin, covers her mouth with her hand. The girl experiences true pleasure, understanding what it is. Seol-ha looks into the distance, thinking that she has suffered all her life because of this, and her father invested a lot of money and effort to help, but to no avail. A slight blush appears on the girl's cheeks. She closes her eyes and holds her hand to her mouth, and the alarmed Kaiguk stands behind, asking if she really likes it. Seol-ha touches her lips in surprise. She reports that it hurts, like her tongue is swollen. The girl asks if this is a taste. The observer looks at her confusedly and questioningly, trying to understand what Seol-ha is even talking about. Opposite the southern gate, Killer Bee Dungeon C rank, stands Seol-ha's father, a girl in a black suit and blonde hair. A man standing to the side takes pictures of them. The entrance to the dungeon glows red. The news is full of headlines that a boss has appeared in the F-rank Killer Bee Dungeon. Experts are observing bursts of C-rank mana. The group members are a B-rank hunter, Kaiguk, an academy newcomer, Seol-ha, and one more. The Hunter's Evening newspaper wonders how this could have happened and why the boss hasn't appeared all this time. Dungeon Breaking News asks what is the likelihood that a B-rank hunter, Kaiguk, will be able to defeat a C-rank boss, and the experts say that it is impossible. Du Chang taps his foot on the ground nervously. He doesn't take his eyes off the dungeon entrance. The news reports that the head of the Heavenly Wing Guild, Du Chang, has arrived on the scene. He folds his arms across his chest and looks ahead sternly. The man's face is tense, and drops of sweat are rolling down it. Next to the nervous Du Chang is a girl wearing glasses, which she adjusts. Seol-ha's father asks Secretary Choi if his daughter is okay. She replies that, of course, this is so, because she is his daughter. The girl assures Du Chang that everything will be fine. From the crowd of people, a guy with black hair pulls his hand with a microphone. He exclaims that Du Chang's daughter is locked in the dungeon and asks how the man is feeling. Secretary Choi turns to him and frowns with displeasure. She states that people are rude. The guy looks at her in fear, and the microphone moves from his hand to the side. The brunette awkwardly looks at the object in his hand, and the people nearby are frightened by what happened. The secretary asks whether he thinks now is the right time to ask such questions. Du Chang turns around, looking at the people with a murderous gaze. The man exclaims that they are scoundrels. The secretary excitedly puts his hand to his temple and asks Du Chang to calm down. The angry man looks at the crowd of people and the secretary looks at him, noting that there are too many witnesses here and they need to think about Skywing's image. There is horror and anger in Du Chang's eyes. People look at the entrance to the dungeon in surprise. They exclaim that the entry restriction has been lifted. It starts to glow blue instead of red. Du Chang and his secretary turn around at the entrance with interest and amazement. The man quickly steps towards him, thinking about his daughter. He notices something and stops. A frightened Kaiguk and surprised guys come out of the portal. People exclaim that all three are out. Du Chang rushes to his daughter and hugs her tightly. The observer and Wu Jin look at this in surprise. Someone shouts that it is a miracle, and the C-rank boss is defeated by a B-rank hunter and 2 cadets from their academy. Suddenly, they notice a black and yellow weapon. The man tells everyone to look at the object in Kai-guk's hands. He looks at the people calmly, hearing shouts that this is a trophy from the boss, which is a unique rank. Information appears on the table that this spear is the Queen of Killer Bees. Its class is unique, and the effect is to add 5 points to agility and strength. On the table there is information that the spear was created from the poison and sting of the Queen Killer Bees, and an opponent hit by the spear will lose 1% of their current physical strength every 10 seconds due to the poison, and the duration is 180 seconds. This spear glows golden, and Kai-guk thinks that weapons and artifacts are divided into 5 ranks: ordinary, rare, unique, epic, and legendary. The observer frowns and remains silent. He understands that in their country the owners of legendary items can be counted on one hand, and therefore he begins to realize its value. People scream and call Kai-guk and asks him to tell him what happened in the dungeon. They ask about how the man killed the C-rank monster. The reporters pull microphones and cameras towards Kai-guk. They are interested in what the boss looked like in the Killer Bee dungeon. The observer looks at them anxiously and remains silent. He receives questions about how he was able to ensure the safety of the cadets. The man does not understand why they are asking this of him. The guy with brown hair filming on his phone persistently asks if Kai-guk killed the boss alone. He looks away upset. He looks at Wu Jin worriedly without turning his head. Kai-guk grins and is about to say something. A man with a black beard smiles easily. This is the director of the military academy, dressed in an orange jacket. He props his head up and looks at the phone screen. Young Kai thinks that because of the academy's achievements, he was worried that he wouldn't be able to be the director. The man looks at an article with a photo of Kai-guk, where it is written that a B-rank hunter, Kai-guk, single-handedly killed a C-rank boss. The cadets helped him. The director realizes that this man was stronger than he thought. In Korean Hunter they write that China is surprised, Japan is amazed. The B-rank hunter, Kai-guk, who is interested in all of America, single-handedly defeated the C-rank boss. People are wondering what next awaits the B-rank hunter and the cadets. The internet has written about the value of the Chu family name. Someone writes that they thought that the Chu clan had pushed back the Skywing, but that was not the case. Someone points out that you can't tell from Kai-guk's face that he killed the boss. One of the posts on the internet asks whether there is a limit to Kai-guk's height. Dungeon Review reports that thanks to his education at the Hunter Military Academy, Kai-guk said that if it weren't for the help of the cadets, he would not have survived. People are actively discussing whether it is possible that this hunter actually killed a C-rank boss. Jong Kai looks up from his phone and looks up, putting his fingers to his face. The man thinks about whether Kai-guk could defeat such a boss. He begins to laugh joyfully, deciding that luck is also a skill. The director decides that in any case it is very good that he invited him. Suddenly, a sound is heard and Jung Kai turns around. The door opens and the director shouts that you can come in. A broadly smiling Kai-guk and the cadets standing behind him appear in the office. The director grins as he greets the heroes. The observer awkwardly scratches his head, denying the compliments. Jong Kai asks not to stand and sit down. The director sits on a chair. Wu Jin and Kai-guk sit on the same sofa, and Seol Ha sits on the opposite sofa. Jong Kai reveals that he called them today to thank them personally and also to discuss the award. The director asks to tell him what happened in the dungeon. The observer smiles and explains that, as he said in the interview, if it weren't for the cadets, he would not have defeated the boss. The director folds his hands in front of his chest and looks with interest at Kai-guk, who gestures and says that at first they thought it was just an F-rank dungeon. Behind the joyful observer, a tired Wu Jin sits, looking at the floor. The director looks at Kai-guk in surprise. Seol Ha's expression is dissatisfied and contemptuous. Jong Kai and the observer are actively communicating. The guy takes a cup of tea in his hand. The director says that everything is clear now. His expression becomes serious. He notes that the matter is unusual. Kai-guk makes a thoughtful face and scratches his chin with his fingers, while Wu Jin, sitting next to him, calmly drinks tea. The observer repeats that it is good that he was with the guys, because otherwise everything could have ended badly. Jong Kai replies that in future we need to be prepared for such situations. The director's gaze turns to the main character. He thinks about how this guy looks familiar. The man looks seriously at the cadet, realizing that his aura is also very familiar. Jong Kai remembers hearing that Wu Jin was offering strange food to the other cadets. His face becomes worried. The director is surprised to remember Mr. Morum and sees that Wu Jin's face is the same. Zhang Kai realizes that this is the head. There is great surprise in his eyes. Zhang Kai looks ahead in fear. Kai Kook wonders what it is. He looks questioningly at the director, asking him what happened. Everyone looks questioningly at the confused Zhang Kai. He replies that everything is fine and praises the guys. The man tells them to rest. Wu Jin closes her eyes, keeping a calm expression on her face. Zhang Kai thinks that this is impossible. The observer and cadets leave the office. Xiao Ha looks clearly ahead and reports that everyone did a good job in the dungeon and she has to go. Kai Kook agrees, noting that she's doing great too, and advises them to go to the hospital just in case. The observer points his hand at the surprised Wu Jin and tells him to go too. The man notes that it's time for him too. The guy motions for Kai Kook to stop, but he jumps back in fear. The man says goodbye, and the main character says to wait. The observer looks warily at the cadet, assuming that he wants to tell him something about the news. His gaze becomes angry, because Kai Kook is displeased when he realizes that Wu Jin himself has been silent all this time. The man remembers the moment when the cadet gave him the spear of the Queen of Killer Bees, and thinks that Wu Jin also said that he did not need the trophy. Kai Kook stood with a spear, and a young man passed behind him, yawning indifferently. The observer remembers that the guy in front of him was also silent, and cannot understand whether he really doesn't care about fame and trophies. Kai Kook looks at the cadet in fear, not understanding why he is behaving this way now. The same one simply invites the observer to exchange numbers. The man calms down a little and asks again. Wu Jin smiles benevolently and extends his hand with the phone. The young man asks him for his phone number, explaining that next time he will treat him again. Kai Kook looks at the cadet in confusion. Bowing his head, he leaves, and the main character and the spirit look after him. The spirit clenches his fists and frowns, angrily shouting that the observer is very arrogant, because it was Wu Jin who killed the boss, not him. The young man is silent and looks away, thinking that people always pay attention to those who are famous, but he does not want to show his face. The main character calmly looks forward, but the spirit is still angry. Wu Jin invites her to come back, because he received a new recipe and ingredients. The main character is standing at a table, and in front of him are two guys and a girl. A student with brown hair and a blue shirt with a surprised face puts the phone screen with the news in front of Wu Jin's face, asking if it is true. The phone shows a photo of Kai Kook and it says that a B-rank hunter, Kai Kook, single-handedly killed a C-rank boss, and the cadets helped him. The guy replies that everything is correct. The guys ask about the F-rank boss and whether Kai Kook really killed her. He replies that it was a B, and this hunter really killed it. Wu Jin's expression is absolutely calm. The guys are interested in how Sol Ha performed. The young man is silent and looks at them, and his head is filled with thoughts that, thanks to Kai Kook and Xiao Ha, he completed the daily quest for the first time. Wu Jin wonders who he should feed his food to today. A man with short black hair, wearing a shirt and tie and a scar on his face above his eyebrow, enters the office. It's teacher Young-do, who shouts that they are starting, and the guys need to sit down. He says that in the last lesson, he and the guys studied traps in labyrinth dungeons, and also practiced a little. Wu Jin scratches his chin and is still thinking about who he should feed today. Young-do holds the remote control in his hands and calmly announces that today they will watch the guys through the screen, and the first will be Hyan-sun. That guy responds in surprise. A guy in a green tracksuit stands on a stone surface and looks around in fear. He asks in surprise where the smoke comes from. The teacher stands near the screen and calmly looks at the guy, explaining that if this was a real attack, he would have already died. Young-do says that when smoke appears out of nowhere, you have to hold your breath and assess the situation. He assumes that the guy was only slacking because they were in class. He shamefully closes his eyes and lowers his head, saying that this is not so and apologizing. The teacher, looking upset, says that he understands that Hyan-sung is confused, but you never know what might happen. The young man cheerfully exclaims that he understands. A man with a tired look presses a button on the remote control. The cadets look in surprise at the teacher, who says that at this rate they have nothing to do with the tournament, which will take place in 2 months. On a sparkling background stands a silver cup with the emblem of the hunters. The hunter tournament is a great opportunity for beginners to show off their skills. 3 people stand, looking sternly ahead. This is the director of the Military Academy for Hunters, Chong Kai, the head of the Heavenly Wing Guild, Du Chang, and a man with gray hair. Even large guilds such as Skywing participate, so these competitions are very popular among citizens. However, over the past 10 years, the Military Hunter Academy has not shown any results. Young-do closes his eyes and leans his hands on the table, exhaling. He understands that there is still time, so he needs to try to teach the guys at least the basics. The man says they continue. Xiao-Ha, who has 98 points, looks around. The teacher tells her to go to the battle site and notes that it is strange that she is still here. Sung-Jun, who has 92 points, stands pressed against the wall. Young-Do says this is perfect. The teacher looks thoughtfully at the screen, realizing that this year there are at least a couple of skillful children. He calls the next student, Woo-Jin. He gets up and calmly looks forward. Sung-Jun perks up and looks at the young man. He thinks that this guy is very mysterious and tries to understand what he is thinking about. Sung-Jun frowns a little, peering at the main character. He wonders what his power is and why he entered the academy. The guy presses himself against the wall and spies on Woo-Jin, who is standing at the stove. Sung-Jun thinks about how he's been watching him all this time, but all he does is cook. The guy didn't think that he would show his true strength so easily. Sung-Jun looks at the screen where Woo-Jin is shown and decides that it's better not to let his guard down after all. On the screen you can see a young man standing and calmly looking somewhere. A lever appears in front of him, which the main character looks at in silence and with misunderstanding. He pushes the lever down. Woo-Jin turns around and sees the exit blocked behind him. It says in red letters on a black background that he died. The guy folds his hands in front of his chest. Woo-Jin has 0 points. The teacher covers his face with his hand, looking at it angrily. Young-Do sighs and says that he doesn't even have anything to say. The young man calmly looks forward, and the spirit nearby clenches his fists and angrily exclaims that she is unhappy with such disrespect for the guy. Sung-Jun sits behind and watches this. The spirit waves its legs and arms as if punching the air, and Sung-Jun raises his eyebrows a little at this. The guy in the brown coat peers closely at Woo-Jin, realizing that he did this on purpose, and wonders why he did this. In the dormitory cafeteria, students sit at tables and eat. Some bring their own food, and some receive it. Someone exclaims that if it were not for this fool, he would not have come here. The blonde, whom the main character met earlier in the tower, calls Henim. He says that if he had not chickened out, they would have reached the 3rd floor. A plump guy with brown hair notes that thanks to him the exam was passed. The guy says that otherwise, he would have gone looking for that scoundrel. A strong guy with short black hair declares that he will kill him the next time they meet. He walks forward, gritting his teeth angrily, followed by 2 more guys. These are uncontrollable guys, Yang Shik and Chol Jin Seop. Yang Shik grins and says that he doesn't like these dungeons with traps. He adds that this teacher is no better than them, since he sits at the academy, and says something else. The teacher, Jong-Do, calmly looks at the tablet and reports that he was lucky to pass the tower with such a level. The guy says that's the reason why he's sitting here, and he's nowhere near Hyunam's level. A guy with short black hair turns his head, noticing something. He sees a plate with a strange dish, assuming it is a chocolate salad. Woo-Jin sits at the table and eats while Chol leans towards him, angrily asking who it is here. The main character raises his eyes, looking at the guy. He notes that the young man eats disgusting food. The blonde looks at Hyunam with confusion, about to explain who it is. He angrily replies that he knows and asks him to shut up. The guy looks at Woo-Jin angrily. They ask him what to do. The guys sit awkwardly at the table next to Woo-Jin, heads down, while he calmly eats his dish. There is horror in Yang Shik's eyes. He remembers the guy's face and decides that he remembers them exactly, and if they screw up, then there will be trouble. The spirit girl happily eats a piece from the dish. She wonders why they shout so much while eating and whether the cook knows them. He replies that he hardly knows these guys. Yeon Shik looks at his food anxiously, picking at his rice, and the blonde awkwardly scratches the back of his head and tells Hyung-Nim to eat. Woo-Jin looks up, thinking about these guys. He pushes a plate of food over, revealing that it's a blue slime and chocolate chip salad that he made. The main character tells the guys to try. Yang Shik looks at the young man in horror, clenches his fist, and beads of sweat roll down his face from anxiety. He realizes that the blue slime is a monster, and Woo-Jin made food out of it. The guy wonders if it's even possible to eat it. He sees death in a black robe with a scythe behind the main character, who asks about it if they will. Yang Shik decides that the young man is the devil. He closes his eyes and puts a piece of food in his mouth. Hyung-Nim understands that he will not die from one piece, and it is better to eat than to be beaten. The guy opens his eyes wide in surprise. The guys are overwhelmed by a big wave. Yang Shik wonders if this is really a dressing and not a mouthwash, because it burns his tongue. The guys are tied together with blue slime, and Hyung-Nim's cheeks are blushing. He suggests that this chocolate aftertaste is mint chocolate. The guy decides it's chocolate mouthwash. The other cadets turn their heads, looking at the guys who are making strange noises. The students are trying to figure out what the guys ate. They lie face down on the table, and under them there are blue puddles of slime. Woo Jin looks at them with satisfaction, thinking that for the first time he sees people who appreciated his dish. Yang Shik raises his head, looking exhausted at the main character. He asks if the guys liked it. Hyunim is about to say something bad. However, looking at the murderous look of Woo Jin who stands in front of him, the guy changes his mind. He reports that it is very tasty. It's night outside, and a beautiful full moon is visible in the dark blue sky. There is a man in the classroom wearing a brown vest and glasses. The man greets the guys, explaining that his name is Jong Shik, and he will teach them about the understanding and types of dungeons. The professor puts out his thumb, index and middle fingers, showing this gesture to the students. He says that he immediately wants to warn that if the guys miss classes, he will immediately suspend them. Jong Shik reports that if the cadets listen carefully to his lectures, they will easily write the first part of the exam in 3 weeks. A girl holding a phone in her hand and a bored guy look at each other. The professor asks if the guys have any questions. He adjusts his glasses and suggests starting the lesson. With his hands folded behind his back, Jong Shik declares that he will now tell the cadets about the goblins at Nanhyeon Station. The man notes that although many people say that this dungeon is not difficult, it can be dangerous for beginners. The professor advises the guys to be careful with the golem that appears along with the goblin. Woo Jin looks ahead seriously, thinking that this lecture is very exciting. The young man is happy that the material is given systematically and based on the experience of the teachers. Jong Shik points his hand at the screen where there is a desert-like area, and monsters are gathering there. The professor suggests looking at an E-rank dungeon. He explains that the most famous dungeon is the abandoned wasteland beyond Van Chimney. The spirit flying near Woo Jin points her finger at the screen in surprise, exclaiming that the pig there is murderous. The young man realizes that it is a wild boar. He imagines a piece of meat from this beast and understands that the smell will be unreal. Jung Shik says that E-rank dungeons are often called a gold mine, because the mineral stones there are very expensive. Wild boars stand on the sand, and nearby there are large stones and bones sticking out. The professor explains that due to the vast territories, people often get lost there, and only a group can enter there. He reports that it is still dangerous for the guys. The spirit exhales pitifully and lowers its shoulders, and Woo Jin thinks, putting his hand to his chin. The girl is upset by what Jong Shik said, because the pigs there are really tasty. The main character wonders if there is really another way to get there. Woo Jin perks up and opens her eyes wide, as the professor points out that you can ask permission from the director. But it's better not to do this, because you need to gain experience first. The main character remembers the director. He sits in his office with a strange expression on his face, and the young man understands that this is Kion,